Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. I am your host, Nicholas Allen, the lesser known operator. This week's guest was Jamie Tilke. Started out his career in Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, and later on went to earn his Green Beret and serve in 1st Special Forces Group out there in Washington. He's currently an entrepreneur. Projects include his YouTube channel, Motion Matters, his high-end boutique hotel, Pineland Express, down in Fayetteville, and his consulting business, Vision in Motion. We'll have links to all of that in the episode description, so check him out and give him a like and subscribe as well. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. We set the record, came in just under 4 hours today, so a long one. I do appreciate everyone that listens, and if you do so, please like and subscribe. Never thought I would be saying that in my life, and I do appreciate you guys. So thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Jamie, welcome to Lesser Known Operators. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. The latest guest that answered my plea on the SF Brothers Facebook page to come on my little show and have, I think we're above tens of listeners now. We're in the low. We could be approaching possibly 100 listeners. So I'm pretty excited about that. I know you've got your own show. What was the name of it again?
Motion Matters.
What's your focus on that show?
Talking about the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship for anybody that's actually ever delved into trying to build something from nothing. It's quite the journey. I have a lot of analogies I use that are, cross-contaminate with special operations time. But so bottom line was I just really wanted to dig back into the raw, authentic conversations of the struggles of entrepreneurship, because a lot of people like to post the pictures of the Lambo or, chilling and partying and clubbing. But the reality is that shit don't come easy. And so let's talk about how you really got there so that the people that are listening understand that, it's a hell of a journey and it doesn't happen overnight.
But you still post the pictures of the Lambo, or no?
No, because I don't have it yet. And if I do, I've never been much of a sports car dude. I'm more of a luxury car dude. So you'll see my Rolls or my Bentley before you see any Lambo. Probably would never buy one. Yeah.
Well, I saw on the kids have the reels and they'll rent the cars or rent the private jets for 15 minutes so that they can make their reels and have the fake life.
100%.
I don't think the streets of Fayetteville are good for a Lambo anyway. I think, maybe something a little higher up.
Yeah, and for sure.
So once you retired, you stayed in Fayetteville. Were you in 3rd Group or?
No, I went to USASOC, and so I was there for 2 years. And then right when I was debating on whether to get out, they had asked me to go to SWIC. So for people that are listening that don't know, it's a Special Warfare's training group. They asked me to go there because that was the same time where there was that highly publicized email that was sent, and basically the entire chain of command got slaughtered. And so they had to put new people in new positions and clean house. And so I was one of the people that they put into SWIC to try to, reinvigorate or, whatever you want to call it.
God, I forgot about that email. It was well written and quite lengthy, I believe. Mm-hmm. People were upset about that. Mm-hmm. I forgot about that. Back to the entrepreneurship. So you got out and you create your own stress, right? So what's your big venture that you got into once you got out?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit just to make a little bit of sense. And if I'm too long-winded, just cut me off. But
no, you're fine.
So I talk about this openly. In fact, I just spoke in Tennessee at a real estate investor meetup about this exact same thing, which was I was what I would say the stereotypical soldier, meaning I was relatively fiscally irresponsible and just kind of lived off of paycheck to paycheck and bought what I want and figure out how to pay for it later. grew up super poor, sometimes didn't have a house or food. And then, so didn't have a lot of financial guidance or understanding really what it meant to have money. So when I got money, I just spent it. And then, when I wanted more, I just tried to make more. And so all of that culminated to right when I was coming back from Okinawa and stationed in USASOC. I was like, I had accumulated, I was take responsibility for it, but had accumulated over 6 figures of credit card debt. And one day I had wanted to get involved in real estate and had already made some movements towards trying to do that. But I just had this one massive epiphany moment and I just told my wife one morning, I said, we're going to become real estate millionaires. And she's like, you're retarded, because we have $5 in the bank and $127,000 of credit card debt. So how the hell is that going to happen? So I said, well, I'm going to sell the only thing we have. And she said, what's that? I said, I'm going to sell this guy. I'm like, I have the tenacity, the perseverance, the determination, all of those adjectives that require for people to be successful. And I'm going to put that 100% into building a real estate portfolio. And so I told her we would be debt free in 12 months. That didn't happen. I did get us debt free in 18 months. And then I built a $6 million portfolio in 36 months. So for people that are listening, I don't want to make that sound sexier than it really is. So yes, we own those assets, but clearly there's still debt on those assets. But nonetheless, I'm definitely still proud of that, right? Because that's a pretty substantial jump, considering that I was, again, negative 6 figures in the hole. So there's a lot of relationship capital that had to be utilized, and trust, and learning stuff in order to be able to make people feel confident in my ability to be able to get the project done. And so going back to what your question is, now that you kind of understand that background, during my latter part of my special operations career, it was primarily, doing the singleton stuff that some of us do, going overseas and working in that capacity. And I stayed in a lot of hotels, and there was one point where I was staying in the Ritz-Carlton, and I just was like, man, this is ridiculous. And I always thought back to staying in the shitty ass Moon Hall on Fort Bragg. And I was like, why do we have to stay in a 200 square foot hotel room with 1980 bed sheets and a little chair in the corner? Like, I want to build upscale accommodations, and I want to provide those to military people that are traveling. And if I can do that below the per diem rate and still make money, like, I'm doing a service by giving them these dope ass places, but then I'm also building a business. So why not do that? And so that's exactly what we did. That's the concept. So when you said, what was your big jump in? That was my big jump in. And so I'm going to close it out here and hand the mic back over to you. But so basically what happened was I pitched my concept that I wanted to open up an upscale boutique hotel to a dozen people at least. And everybody was like, dude, love your enthusiasm. I love the concept, but it's never going to work. And I just kept saying it is going to work. And then finally, my best friend, since we were about 9 years old, was fairly successful in the entertainment industry and lived in Hollywood, California. And so I flew out to him and I said, look, dude, you got the money. I have the concept. Here's the deal. It's a one-time offer. You give me the money. I'm going to build this thing. I'll give you 50% of everything. I'll do 100% of the work. I just need your money. So he gave me $500,000. Well, I should tell you this. So my pitch was, I pitched a concept about an upscale boutique hotel, but my pitch was, look, I need 18 months and $500,000. Well, spoiler alert, it did not take 18 months. It took me 4 years, and it took $1.4 million to do the first 12 units. So needless to say, he was less than excited about that during that process, not to mention a bunch of stressful stuff, the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, in February of last year, that initial property that we took down just appraised for $2.27 million. So it worked. And we've successfully been operational for over 5 years. But that was the big jump and leap of faith. And then from there, as I kind of referenced to you before we jumped on this official call, like, I started doing a bunch of other stuff and I buried myself to the point where I literally was drowning, and I just was like the episode out of the Tom and Jerry cartoon where he's in the water and breathing through a straw.
Do you think that once you got one thing going, you kind of felt like I'm this badass dude from my previous life and I can just create as much stress as I want and I can handle it just like you used to?
I think that's probably subconsciously was part of it, but I think the cognitive part that really is, I'm just a visionary guy. Like if you started talking to me right now and you were like, hey, Jamie, I'm thinking about opening up this, I'm just pulling random stuff out. Hey, Jamie, I'm going to open up this coffee mobile truck. Like I'll just start thinking about it and I'll be like, Nick, this is like, I got a whiteboard off here to my, I'll be like, Nick, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. Like, how are we going to structure this? And, you know, where's the LLC going to come from? And how can we open up the bank accounts and get your EIN number? And how, like, I just start thinking about that stuff. I can't stop it. There's no switch for me. And so as I was building out and framing out this business, I came up with this whole enterprise concept in my head. And I was like, man, I can vertically grow this company, right? So why would I not open up a construction company? And why would I not opening up a property management company? And why would I not become a real estate agent? And why would I not opening up an interior decorating company? Like all of these things support the other businesses in some way, shape, or form. I still believe to this day, the concept is great. The problem is I needed 3 to 4 more people on my left and right that could have done it simultaneously with me. But because I didn't have that was I was quite literally the single point of failure, right? And so I was the epitome. Like if there was ever a poster made for an inch deep and a mile wide, like I did that to myself.
Yeah, especially once you get out in the civilian world, right? You know your capabilities, but then finding the capabilities you had on a team to come and do the projects with you, because everybody's all very scattered and all busy, but to get them to buy in on what's going on in your head has got to be tough. I mean, you said you needed 3 people on each side of you, so that's 3 more of you. That's impossible to find in the civilian world right when you get out.
Exactly. And you know what? I didn't really answer your question. So the answer to your question, and then I'll answer the second one is that it's not that I thought I was Billy Badass per se. It's that my mind works at 100 miles an hour and I'm the type of person like, it's not insurmountable. Like there's a solution to this. Let's figure it out. Let's move forward. So while the vast majority, I say this frequently, I said fear is the number one thing that inhibits the vast majority of people from going after their dreams and aspirations. And I believe that. I'm the guy that stands on the proverbial cliff and I just jump, right? So that's good and bad, right? I'm not risk adverse to the point where I'm going to be analysis paralysis and sit there and do anything. But at the same time, I will take that leap of faith and sometimes prematurely without having all of my ducks in a row. As we like to say in the military, right? I'm building the airplane in flight. And again, there's pros and cons to that. So the answer to your question was, it wasn't so much about thinking I was Billy Badass per se. It was that I have all these concepts. They're mutually supporting. This thing is going to be amazing. Let's go time now. Right. And I just started going. And so when I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning, true story, by the way, when I would wake up at 2:00 in the morning and I have these visions of like what I want to do and how it's going to do, I just go straight to the computer and I start typing it out. I start building spreadsheets. I start putting things in. I woke up at 2:00 in the morning to build vision in motion, and no bullshit. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, I had already been working with this person, but we didn't know what exactly we were building. But I had already reached out to my marketing person and we had all of the schemes, the website, the EIN, the LLC, everything was done by 3 p.m. that day. And so that's the pace that I was working at, right? So it's like, well, then I can just do all this. But the reality is there's the operational aspect of it. I mean, it's you could be the best visionary with a concept of how you're going to take down an objective or take a mission that you're assigned to. But if you sit there and do that, and then all of a sudden you try to do it solo, like, well, where's your comms guy? Where's your medic? Where's your support by fire? All these other aspects.
You should see me edit a Instagram reel. It's pretty much the opposite of what you just described there. Is me just second guessing myself on to put something in or put something out, and it's a painful process. And you said you referred to the, the Army. We're building the airplane in flight, right? That's kind of the Army's way of doing things. Is they'll just jump in and we'll figure it out as we go. And in the Army, you can't fail. If you do fail, you're still in the Army. You're still supported. You still have a job. You have all this. What was that feeling like? Because if you fail in the Army at a project, you might get some kickbacks from your boss or something like that. But in the real world, you could lose your house and lose your life. What was that? What was that mindset transition like to coming to understand that this could affect the rest of my life now?
Well, it's immense. But while I comprehended that and understand that, I think my tenacity, my ability to get stuff done, it wasn't one of those things that caused me any type of serious paralysis. To me, I'm just like, we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. But I think over time, it's became more at the forefront of my mind because it's became it's been a noose around my neck. Right. And part of the reason, and these are close friends that have given me a lot of the capital that I raised. Part of the reason that they told me that they gave me the capital was because they knew my work ethic, and they said that the only way this isn't going to happen is if you die. Right. So like, I'm relatively comfortable. Yes, there's risk with everything, but I know that you're not just going to quote unquote tap out. And so right now, today, I'm leaving out a bunch of stuff because it would take us a very long time to talk about every single vignette, if you will, over the past 5 years. But I'm at a point now, just before we came on air, I told you my 2025 mantra is declutter. So we're closing businesses down. We're divesting is another military term that I like to use. We're divesting in a bunch of shit because the other analogy that I like to tell people is I successfully stopped my boat from sinking, but I wasn't doing anything effectively well, consistently. Yes, I was able to maintain revenue coming in and keep the lights on, so to speak, but I could have done much better if I wasn't spread so thin. So that's why right now it's all about a season of let's get rid of the shit that we put all this time, effort, and money into that's producing little to no revenue and stealing from my ability to be able to be exceptionally well at one particular thing. And I know I'm kind of jumping around, but the last thought I would like to leave with, I have a lot of people that reach out to me now because they maybe know me or they've seen kind of the journey over the past 5 years. And they're like, look, man, I'm thinking about doing this. What's your thoughts? And I tell them, I've always preached that if you hyper focus on one thing and truly become the subject matter expert, like you can charge a premium and you can be the go-to person and be successful in your business, making multiple six figures. And even though I was preaching that, I wasn't doing that. I literally was the epitome of the pot calling the kettle black, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, do as I say, not as I do, right? That's, and so I had to do some self-reflection part and just be like, look, dude, you're a single dude. You don't have any superpowers that are beyond this dimensional world, right? So in other words, there's only 24 hours in a day. We all get the exact same amount of time. And the reality is, unless you build a team of people, which is going to cost a lot of initial capital and all these other variables, what you're doing is not sustainable. And so you got to slow down.
Yeah, I there's a lot of things aren't sustainable. You can only push yourself so far. But I like that with, people ask you, should I do this? And then I've got to the point, what is it? Not even like 5-6 weeks ago now, this project, doing this show and making my own little brand for myself. I had the idea of not 8-9 years ago now, something like that. And then finally just sit down and just say, just do it. Just get after it and work it out. I more work things out. I'll say, let's just do it and let's just improve upon it as we go along. Because mine's more perfection is the enemy of good enough, right? From selection. Yep. You can't sit there and make that apparatus perfect right away because it's going to fail no matter what. So let's improve as we go along.
Yep.
So that kind of moves us into where you are today. Were you always kind of had that 100-mile-an-hour mindset throughout your life? Did that start in high school? Because you said I was reading one of your bios. It said you wanted to be a rock star.
Yep. Yeah.
And
No, you're 100% spot on. In fact, I'll touch on that, but I tell people that's why I think I made it through selection. That's why I think I made it into the special operations community. For people that can't tell from from looking at me, when I came in the Army, I was 6'2" and 145 pounds. Think about that, dude. Like, you could see my rib cage. In fact,
we
when I
would
showed up
carry
to
rucks
basic,
that are 135 pounds sometimes. So
right.
yeah,
When I
yeah.
showed up to basic, I remember my drill sergeant said, "Holy shit, there is no way that you're going to make it through the Ranger indoctrination program. It's not happening." Like, well, and in fairness to him, my first 2-mile PT test was 20 minutes. Like,
It's a good. You
the
can
only
only get
dude,
better from there. You can
yeah,
only get better from there. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so to bring it back to what your point is like, I think mindset is everything, right? And that's what I tell when I share my story with friends and family about, like, what was it like to go through Ranger indoctrination programs, SFAS, Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and live in, is I was like, there was dudes on my left and right that could lift 400 pounds, but they didn't make it, or guys that could run, 2 miles in 11 minutes or less, and they didn't make it. And it's not that those guys weren't physically fit, because clearly they were. It's that mentally they tapped out quick, because,
Yeah.
as you know, from being through it yourself, like, we're not eating cupcakes and singing Kumbaya. Like, it's tough. And so the analogy that I now use with, relating special operations selection processes in the different units and organizations to the life of an entrepreneur is, I say, listen, here's the deal with entrepreneurship. It's the selection process that never ends, right? And I guess you could somewhat say that when it comes to living the life of a special operations soldier as well. But my point is this: 26 days later, nobody comes in and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're now selected, so now you can continue on." No, like, every single day sucks in entrepreneurship. Actually, that's not true. Not every single day, but there's many days that suck, and those are the days where people typically tap out. That's my point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Because it's a reoccurring theme. I mean, you might get a deal and all of a sudden gross $50,000 in 30 days in revenue, and then the next month it's crickets, right? Those are two extremes. I'm just trying to make a point. The point is a lot of people are like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to tap out. I'm going to go back to my W-2 job. But your original question of, like, is that the way I've always been? Yes, I think it was, and has been. It's who I am. I also, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, I grew up super poor, and I think one of the things that invigorated me was I was just not going to be a product of my circumstances. So there was no victimhood mentality for me. I'm not taking anything away from people that truly struggle with trying to overcome significant things in their lives, whether that's, emotional, physical abuse, or anything type of like that. My point I'm trying to make is that we all have the ability to make a decision on whether we're gonna change. And if you don't change, then there is no change, right? And so for me,
Yeah.
I grew up super poor, and it probably seems a little bit shallow, but I was just like, I don't want to be the dude who can't afford to wear a pair of shoes that I want, right? And, like, I want to wear nice clothes, and I don't want to wear hand-me-downs, and I don't want to eat Salvation Army cheese, and I don't want to live in a tent instead of living inside of a house. This is fucking ridiculous. And so I think that was a massive drive. In fact, I'm writing a book right now, and this is in the book too, but it's that. So my father, he was much better off, right? They owned a restaurant. Now, he worked his ass off, but that's not my point. My point is that they weren't struggling, right? And so when I did visit a couple times during my childhood, I had some animosity, because I'm like, dang, we are sucking ass. And these guys are just living large. But now, much, much older and having gone through everything I've gone through, I look back at that and I say, I definitely I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not gone through those extreme challenges during childhood. Like to answer your question, I don't know if I would have that same level of drive. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but I definitely think growing up without a lot of shit, the pleasures and things like that really drove me.
Yeah, tough situation, especially young, will make you go one way or go another way. Like you could have very easily gone the other way and said, "Woe is me," and gone down a path where you just played the victim or whatever. And I say to people all the time when they're complaining or something, I said, just remember you're 2 or 3 decisions away from living in the trailer park, and I don't mean owning it. And the same thing goes for when you're in the trailer park. You're 2 or 3 decisions away from having your own place or possibly getting yourself out of that situation.
Yeah.
So, you've got this, humble beginnings, and then you get into high school and you want to be a rock star, to Ranger Battalion, to the Army. Take me through that thought process, because, you graduate high school, you're full of piss and vinegar. And then what leads you to walk into the recruiter's office and say, I want to be a Ranger?
I want to give you a quick vignette on the rock star thing. So in high school, I played guitar, right? And then I found a couple buddies. One played drums, the other one played guitar as well. It was in my senior year of high school that I said, I'm going to play out in a live venue before we graduate high school. Yet again, people are like, that's not going to happen. A, you don't have a singer. B, you don't have a bass player. And C, you have no notoriety whatsoever and no venue to play at. So how is that even possible? We grew up in a fairly small town. And I was like, look, it's going to happen. So without getting into all the minutia, all I'll simply say is there was another somewhat successful local rock band. And I went to their bass player and I said, hey, actually he played guitar, but he was going to play bass for us. And I said, hey, would you guys do one show with us, just you and your lead singer, so that I can make my dream become a reality? And he said, yeah, let's do it. And then we grew up in a small town, so the local hangout on the weekends was a roller skating rink. So I went to the owners of the roller skating rink and I said, I want to play a live venue here. And nobody had ever done that before. And so they're like, well, I don't even know what that would look like. And I said, listen, we can set up in the center of the rink. Everybody else can still skate or whatever. And then people that want to come can come. And so they agreed to it and we did it and it went off. And I made it happen. And I had no money to finance the project either. So I had to basically sell the concept to a bunch of people. I got other high school friends to donate some money so that we could rent the audio and video equipment. Well, back then it wasn't really much video, but mostly audio equipment, right? And then we rent the stage and all this stuff. So that was just one demonstration of, even at age of 17, my mind wasn't about, don't tell me how we can't. I only want to talk about how we can. Like, this can happen and it's going to happen. And so from there, I was like, I was going to become a rock star. Here's spoiler. Obviously, I didn't become a rock star, or I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you probably right now. But the second part
Maybe you would.
Possibly. The second part is that, and this is me kind of being just, very open about the mindset, is that I wanted what the life of a rock star could bring, but I wasn't really passionate about music in that way, right? Which is why I was okay, but I wasn't great. I wasn't Joe Satriani or Steve Vai, and those are extreme examples, but I wasn't even a quarter or a fifth of what they were. I could play good rhythm guitar and a couple lead licks. That's about it. If I was truly passionate about it, the way my high school buddy was, he literally pulled the Bryan Adams right out of the song. He played the guitar till his fingers bled. I would come over to his house and his fingertips would be bleeding. And I'd be like, dude, how many hours you practice today? He's like, 12. Like, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I'm practicing 30 minutes, And so the bottom line is that the rock star thing was never going to work out. I had the look, I had the long hair down in my pants, all that type of stuff, but I wasn't passionate enough about being a musician to actually have the skill sets that it would require to become a musician. And so from there, I became an over-the-road truck driver, lots of stories in between there. And during that time of being an over-the-road truck driver, I came home one weekend and I watched Rambo for like the 70th time or whatever. And I was like, dude, I'm going to join the Army and I want to be like that. And so I went into the recruiter's office. Well, I actually went into the Coast Guard first. And I said, I want to do illegal drug and seizures. They're like, nobody does that job. You have a different job and then you get assigned that task for a certain amount of time. So I was like, oh, I'm not interested. So then I went over the Army thing and then I talked to them and the guy put in this laser disc, man. And it was a Ranger School video. And he played it and it showed like somebody devenomizing a snake and fast roping out of helicopters and like shooting. And I was like, bro, that's the shit I need to do right there. And I could, looking back, that guy probably was like, man, we got a sucker here. And so they're like, you want to become a Ranger? And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so I signed up. I had zero, and I mean zero idea of what it meant to become a Ranger. I barely understood what I was volunteering for to become in the military, right? And so it was a very eye-opening experience when I show up for RIP day one. So that's kind of how the process went as far as me getting in there. But as time kind of evolved, progressed forward during basic training and talking to other people and whatnot, and then actually showing up for, Ranger selection, by that time I was fully invigorated and I was like, I'm making it through here. Like quitting's not an option.
Yeah, it's hard to conceptualize from what the recruiter tells you to what actual real life is, because they could probably recycle that Ranger ad now and play it and everybody be like, that's badass, and people would sign up. But even the 18 X-ray program, they would show you something and it looks really cool, but then guys get to SOPSI and they get brutalized for 2 months and then they have a bad time. It's nothing. They didn't tell me anything about this. I'm sensing a theme of you get an idea in your head, you set an unrealistic goal, and then you do everything you can in life to accomplish it. Is that pretty much the pattern?
100%. You know what's crazy, Nick? It took me until I was 50 years old to realize that pattern, and you just realized it in less than 20 minutes. So,
well, I got to hear the story. You didn't get to hear the story laid out in front of you as a third party. So,
well, there's another aspect of it, and I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to be brief because I tend to get emotional when I talk about this, and I don't feel like crying on your show. So here's the deal:
okay.
Is because I grew up really poor in my circumstances, I had all these massive, audacious dreams and goals, but I don't believe I was worthy of them. And so my entire life, to your point, was I'm going to do this and show everybody I can. So I think that was also a driving factor. Like people said to me, bro, why did you pick Chinese? I said, well, one, they were offering a $20,000 bonus, but two, my understanding is it's the most difficult language on the planet. So why do I not want to learn that language? Let's do it. And so we started with 20, we ended with 9. I did it. Ranger Battalion, I went there in the 90s. We had like 80 something people. I don't know the exact number, right? But I just remember it was somewhere around 80 or 90 people, but only mid to upper 20s of us made it through. Same thing with selection. You know how that went, right? 400 and something dudes, like 118 of us got selected.
I think, it was 150. We had 420 plus, and I think 150 at the end. So.
Yeah. And so to your point, I think I've spent a large piece of my life by picking ridiculous shit just to prove to myself that I can. And more recently, and I think the part that really kind of, when I said I was 50 years old before I went to a course to get mentored on how to become a transformational speaker. Because at this point, I just want to try to help inspire and motivate other people to go after their dreams and aspirations and not let fear inhibit their desires. And so it was during that process, I got really choked up on stage and like couldn't speak and stuff. And the guy's like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, man. I really, really genuinely don't know right now. And I think through that 48 hours of processing it, and talking with this one particular individual, I think what came out of it was exactly what you just summarized so eloquently in such a short amount of time, which was, I've spent the vast majority of my life trying to prove that I'm worthy, right? For what? For everybody else. So now it's kind of trying to shift focus a little bit, I think, and saying, no, you can. You've already proven it over and over and over again. Like there's no lack of willpower. It's just, where's your energy being focused and for what purpose? And I think that's where I'm at now.
Well, you know, especially in SF, we're quiet professionals, right? And that's pushed into us. You got to be quiet, and I think that kind of funnels into this imposter syndrome of we've forced down how great our accomplishments are, and then when it's over, oh, we're not worthy of the benefits of it later. But you did all these things, and when you're sitting old one day in the chair and you look back, you'd be like, yes, I'm glad I fucking did that, because I think that's going to be real torture, right? When you're too old to accomplish the things you wish you did. But at least you'll be able to look back and say, I set the goal, I accomplished the goal, and I did everything I could. So you won't have that. That's why, because you understand, at least at a subconscious level, that you're not going to want to look back when you're too old or to do something and get tortured by the fact that you didn't take the leap of faith to believe in yourself to go do that. And I think guys get bogged down like that. They don't believe that they're worthy of their own accomplishments or their own merit and things like that. Is that something that you would agree with, or what?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I read a lot of books, and that's what you just lined out is a reoccurring theme in a lot of, self-help and self-development books and stuff like that. And that is that, most people, when they come to the time of ending their time here on earth, one of the heaviest weights is the reflection of all the shit they wish they had have done but never did. And that's why that in conjunction with the story we've been talking about of what does Jamie Tilke's life look like. That's why I have 5 kids. 4 of them are up and out. We still have one at the house. But I talk to them routinely about not being stuck at the proverbial cliff. Take the leap of faith. Do it, right? And if you fail, cool. I guarantee there's a life learning lesson that you're going to get out of there that's going to make you a better person and shape you for the next adventure. That's it. But instead of being fearful of ridicule, fearful of failure, right? I try not to use that word anymore because, and I know it's very cliche because it's become common in social media and stuff to say that, it's not failure, it's lessons learned. And I believe that. So yeah, the short answer to your question is, yeah, I concur with you that there will be plenty of people that are going to say shoulda, coulda, woulda. We talked about an organization that's about, people are not supposed to talk about. That's one of my regrets in the military is I thought about it, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I didn't. But it's fine because, I ended up kind of getting more involved in the intelligence side of the house. And what I realized is, that was my strength, right? Human communication and relationships. I was good at it. And so because, I think it helped the organization out better. So it's fine. And I think it prepped me really well for, the entrepreneurial journey and stuff.
Taking on any of these big projects, even in entrepreneurship, you got Ranger Battalion or SF, right? It's this level of suffering, and that breeds strength on the backside, just like you're making a knife, right? You got to heat it up and then quench it so it'll become tempered. That's the whole process. So we go to the recruiter, we decide we're going to go to basic training. You're 6'2", 145 pounds, you said?
Yeah.
That's for reference, I'm 5'11" and 235 pounds. So that's rail skinny.
Yeah, you can see my rib cage, no joke.
But the recruiters, they just need to get people through the door. So they're sending you and going, this kid's going to have have a rough time.
Yeah.
Did you have the rough time in basic that they probably thought you were going to?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because it's the '90s, right? It's the mid '90s.
Right. And again, judging a book by its cover, I literally looked at myself in the mirror and thought to myself, true story, I thought to myself, I'm in good shape because I wasn't obese or fat.
Well, I mean, you can be in bad physical shape, and as long as your mind is tough, you know that from the course, right?
Well, that's my point.
If
That's
you're,
the only reason why I made it.
yeah,
That's my point that I'm telling people is I'm telling people that, because I would go to parties after, and I would have other, SF guys' wives look at me and be like, "Are you on a team?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "You don't look like you're on a team." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." Because I didn't have, 20-inch guns or because, whatever. But going back to what I was going to say, though, is I said, I'm in decent shape, but let me try to do something. And so when I was still a truck driver, right? And I would stop at truck stops and I would run around like the truck stop parking lot, or I would try to do some push-ups and shit. Dude, I was so pathetically out of shape. Like I couldn't run probably 500 meters before I had to catch my breath. And because of my lankiness, when I got in the military, people looked at me and instantly assumed this dude is probably a marathon runner. I remember when I ran my first 3-mile route with an SF major before I was actually in SF. And I fell way behind those guys. And they're like, dude, I just assumed that you probably run like the Boston Marathon or something. I was like, no, I hate running and I suck at it. And everybody would always ask me, how the hell did you make it through Ranger Battalion? And I was like, determination. Every single day when I woke up, I was just like, I got to just make it through PT. Yeah. I just got to make it through PT. And for people that don't know that might be listening, typically in those type of communities, and definitely in Ranger Battalion during my time when I was in there, you better be good at one of two things. You better be good at PT or a good rucksacker, right? Yeah. And for me, I was good at carrying the rucksack because of my tallness and my long legs, right? So while other people are jogging, I'm typically just carrying out a nice fast pace and still being able to maintain the same type of, pace. So anyway, yeah, I did not fit the stereotypical picture. It's all about the mind. And that's why I believe 100% that I made it through that stuff is because I'm like, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit.
What's the pipeline look like for once because everybody goes to infantry basic at Benning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then airborne and then RIP or
yes.
So what's RIP?
Ranger Indoctrination Program, and I believe I don't believe I know they have changed the name.
Is it RASP?
That's it.
Ranger Assessment
and Selection. They probably didn't like the word indoctrination, but in my humble opinion, it 100% was indoctrination.
The whole army, the whole military as a whole is taking young people and pulling them into our team side. So the whole thing is.
Yeah. So, I went through basic training, 11 Bravo basic training, just like everybody else. And then I went to airborne school. No major issues there. Which, by the way, I had never flown a plane except for I flew a plane to basic, but other than that, I'd never flown a plane. And then I decided to jump out one. Again, another thing where it's like, I'm just going to do it. Like, was I nervous? Was I scared? Yeah. But I'm like, I'm just going to step out. In my mind, it was a probability thing. I'm like, thousands and thousands of people jump out of the airplane every single day. And rarely, if ever, do you hear about somebody dying. So if today's the day that my chute doesn't open and I don't make it, then I guess it was my time. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, finished airborne school. And then, I don't know if they still do it like this, but this was, Fort Benning, Georgia. So the Ranger instructors came and picked you up and they did the whole thing I had heard about during my basic training, which was they would make you grab your rucksack and other people would be watching and being like, dang. And then you threw your duffel bags on there and then you would carry some basic other stuff. And in full BDUs with boots on, they went at like probably a 6-minute. I was debating on whether it was even faster than that, but a smoking ass pace, 6-minute mile pace down to the organization, which I don't know the exact distance, but we'll say it's about a mile, right? And so needless to say, from the second they took off, people just start stringing along. Funny little story is there was one guy, who did know a lot about the military. His parents had served, his brothers had served, and he would talk to me all during basic training about what it was going to be like in Ranger Battalion and this and that, and what a day in the life looks like and stuff like that. Based on what his understanding of the military was. They got us over there. They smoked us for probably about 45 minutes. And then they stood us at the position of attention, and they said, if you want to leave right now, now's your time. Whoever wants to leave, raise your hand. And 8 people raised their hand instantly. And one of them was that guy. And I was so shocked that I looked right over him and I go, dude, what are you doing? And his response was, bro, this ain't for me. And I'm like, all that stuff you talked. And then he said, no, man, I'm going to go to Special Forces selection. This all happened in a matter of about 3 seconds, right? But in my mind, I didn't have no more time to say anything to it. But in my mind, I'm like, how the hell are you going to make it through Special Forces selection if you can't make it through this? Right? Because in my mind, it was a sequential thing, right? And so anyway, they did that a series of times throughout the next couple of hours, and a bunch of people tapped out. So we probably showed up there with over 100 people, but they weeded out, 20 plus within the first few hours of people that are just like, screw this crap. But yeah, it was a 3-week process. And I still tell people this, in my opinion, for me, the number one most difficult road march in my entire military career was the 12-miler in RIP. And that was because they went at a retarded pace for the first 2 miles and a retarded pace on the last 2 miles. And they did that to weed people out. But you were not allowed to run. You had to be able to be an arm's length away from the person in front of you. You had to be able to reach up and, touch their rucksack or whatever. And they had all these like restrictions and stuff to kind of weed people out. But it was just a brutal pace that first 2 miles. I mean, I just remember my feet were just destroyed. In fact, to the best of my recollection, that is the number one thing that dropped the most amount of people. It was like over 40 people that didn't make that road march.
Wow.
Yeah. It was brutal pace.
Yeah, we got to also look at your time frame, right? Rangers, gatekeeper organization as it is, but your cadre are coming off of Desert Storm and Black Hawk Down incident.
Yeah.
So you've got some of those guys. Yeah, some of those guys are coming. And I say this about like SOPSI and selection and things. You've got a fresh war starting, and then guys are going to SOPSI or for SF in 2005. And those cadre do not want to be there. They don't want people in their regiment that are losers, and they're just taking it out on the students. Did you kind of have, looking back, see that's the way probably that was going through their minds? As though, because the cadre, in my minds, they don't want to be dealing with children, and that's just what new Rangers are, right? They want to be with their guys in their company doing Ranger stuff. Is that kind of what you saw looking back?
I think the one that probably stands out the most is Sergeant Strucker, and he was at the tail end. Like, he was actually at the point of separating from being a cadre instructor. But for people that don't know, he's the guy in the movie Black Hawk Down that's driving the Humvees, one of the main characters. And so he literally saw the dude's head get blown apart, and then have to, continue to deal. And so I've never had a sit down conversation with him. I was a private, right? Yeah. I mean, that's not happening. But from everything that I understand about people who knew him, and also, other things over the time, is that mission clearly had a massive impact on his life. And so after that, he turned to turned to Christ and, became very spiritual, and then ultimately became an Army chaplain. But that duration in between, from the end of Somalia, right, him becoming a Ranger indoctrination cadre member, he was absolutely brutal on selectees, attending that course. Not to mention, I heard so many war stories. This is definitely pre-social media time, but just about his physical fitness levels, like that this guy would run and his heart rate, barely rose. And, he was just, he had done the best Ranger competition and won it, if I'm not mistaken, multiple times. So, he had the ability to break you down. And to your point, I think I can't speak for him. I don't know what was going through his mind in those moments, but was there probably some element of, I'm going to make sure that these are the right individuals, or because of the trauma that I experienced and the things that I seen, I'm going to make sure that we truly do have the best of the best. And so I'm going to be relentless on these people. So yeah.
That's no, terrible. I never went. Terrible thing, and yeah, just to come back and have to deal with those things. I can't even imagine what would go through his mind or any of the cadre's mind on a daily basis. And then it starts all over again after. So it's a 3-week process. You said, right? And then you get your scroll, and then it's off to your battalion.
Yep.
So
yep.
You went to 375.
Yeah. I put in to go to 275 in Fort Lewis because my sister was living over there. And I was told I was probably going to get it. But that's when there was stuff going on with, man, my memory's kind of getting bad, but I believe it was Haiti, some stuff was going on at the time. And so when they were telling us where we were going, they put us all in formation out in the front in the basketball courts. And they were like, everybody's going to 375. So if you thought you were going somewhere else, you're not. Bang. Okay, cool. So we went to 375, and I went with 6 other guys that got sent to weapons platoon. So back then, was the Carl Gustav anti-tank gunners and the mortar guys. But within 6 months, there was only 2 of us left. So they made it through selection, but they didn't make it through Ranger Battalion.
Yeah, that's one thing about Ranger Battalion, right? Is when you're in group SF or Special Forces, you can get kicked off your team and you go down to the B team, or you get relocated to another team. You're not kicked out of Special Forces. If you can get kicked out of Ranger Battalion at any time for pretty much any reason, right?
Yeah. I talk about it all the time, and when I'm telling stories, that is, because that was one contrast for me that was crazy, is exactly what you just said. I'm like, in Ranger Battalion, if you don't, they will RFS you, release for standards. You may get a notice. At most, you're probably going to get one. I still remember when the command sergeant major, we did an impromptu, they said, everybody's going on the battalion field. Command sergeant major stood up on the podium and said, we are going to do a 5-mile Ranger regimental run today. I was only a battalion, but so battalion level run. And we are going to use a Ranger standard. It's 8-minute mile plus or minus 15 seconds. If you fall out of this run, you will be released for standards. Do you have any questions? And I remember looking at one of my buddies and I was like, they ain't going to do that. Like, just for one run? 6 dudes fell out and 6 dudes left battalion. And here's the amazing thing that really blew my mind. One of them was an E6, Ranger qualified, Jump Master qualified, and had a Pathfinder badge. My point of saying that, for people that are listening to your show that don't know, like, that took a while to get that guy to that point, right? It took a while to get the rank. He had to get to schools. He had to get qualified. So they invested time and money,
Yeah.
That dude was out of there in 7 days. In 7 days, he was over at the headquarters waiting to PCS to wherever his next assignment was, Alaska or whatever. And that was my wake-up call for like, bro, these, they ain't playing. Like, every day is a struggle, and either you want to be here or you don't want to be here. But they will drop you in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. I don't know if that's how it works in these days, but I'm saying back then, man, you're out. And so when I tell you that I showed up with 6 guys to weapons platoon and only 2 of us were left 6 months later, it's, you know, it's a rough life, bro. You got to want to be there every day.
Normal unit in the regular armies is one thing, level of professionalism there, but Ranger Battalion is, as they tout themselves, the most professional and most prolific infantry unit in the world, right? That is what they do. And they support the tier 1, or the highest unit that there is in the military, right? That's their main customer for supporting them. So there's no room for fucking around.
And the one thing that I'll say that I've always shared with like my family and stuff is I'm very, very proud of the fact that I served there and I was able to be there for 3 years. The guys that stayed there for 6, 8, 10, 16 years, like, bro, man, because not only that, but the training regiment.
Yeah, this training cycle is just endless, right? You get a 4-day weekend, deployment, come back, 100% inventory, and then you get your leave, and then you start all back over, right? It's just this never-ending loop.
But it's also it was brutal and relentless in the fact that like there wasn't a lot of what we have today taking in, nutritional aspects and does this person have a rest day and are we having them recover properly? It was exactly what most of us experience, right? Which is, drink more water and take some Motrin. Shut up. I remember I got a stress fracture on my first road march there. They made me the RTO. And I was walking with the platoon sergeant, and I knew that, this was my introduction into the organization, and that I had to make it. I got a stress fracture at mile 3. It was excruciating, but I finished that road march, the 12 miles, because I was like, if I fall out right now, they're probably going to dump me. Yeah. They're going to be like, no, you're out. Peace. In fact, I remember like halfway through my platoon sergeant even questioning, do you really have a stress fracture? Or, I mean, I didn't know it was a stress fracture, but like, is your foot really that painful or are you just bullshitting? I'm like, no, it hurts. He's like, well, can you keep walking? Yes. Then keep walking. Okay.
Yeah. Are you hurt or you're injured?
And then the next day I went and found out that, I had fractured my 3rd metatarsal. And I was like, yeah, that's good. So yeah, all that just simply to say that I'm very proud of the time there because it was a daily challenge. And particularly, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I've never been a great runner. I don't love running. I typically think about trying to stop as soon as we start. But I knew that I had to, and at one point, one of my squad leaders, which ran PT cycle most of the time, could run like a 10:45 or 11-minute 2 mile. So like every day I was like, dang, I hate my life.
Do you remember an 18 Delta being attached to you guys that was from a special forces group and he was just attached to you guys as a medic?
No.
Because
go ahead.
The guy I talked to yesterday was 18 Delta and he got attached to Ranger Battalion. So they had one 18 Delta in every company after Black Hawk Down. It was like right in the time that you were there at 375. His name was Randy McAwee.
No. I mean, that very well may be in help. But remember, as a private in Ranger Battalion,
you just don't have any bandwidth on anything, right? You're just trying not to get your head shot off.
I just don't want to get fucking smoked above and beyond the smokings that are going to come anyways. Like, I'm not trying to bring more pain onto myself. And I just want to make it to the next day. And I just want a chance to go to Ranger School. That's it.
Did you get that chance?
I did. I almost got kicked out of Ranger Battalion because when I got there, it was all about TIB, time in battalion, right? So in other words, if Nick got there in January of 96, let's say, and I got there in April of 96, well, you get a shot to go first before I do. So it was all about TIB, time in battalion. When McChrystal came there, retired General McChrystal, they implemented a few new standards. And one of those new standards was that it was no longer just dependent upon TIB. It was dependent on your, your performance. And so they started doing PT tests, and then they would pick people who could run faster. And I got pissed because I could make the Ranger standard. Otherwise I wouldn't have been there. They would have kicked me out, but I couldn't run faster than those two dudes. Those dudes were running 11 minutes. Like, I wasn't in that league. So I say that shit just popped up. On a good day, I was like low 13s, maybe high 12s.
And which is perfectly acceptable.
So, but here's what happened. So those guys leapfrogged me.
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest now, looking back at it, I got pissed. And I was like, that's fucking bullshit. And so I had a pissy attitude for a while, and they sensed that. And they weren't having that. And they were gunning for me, waiting for me to trip up. And in fact, what happened was this. I waited until everybody went on block leave, and then I applied for selection and assessment. This is probably 98, right? And when they got back from selection, and my platoon sergeant had found out about it because they had notified the unit. And they called me in his office, and basically this is what happened. They were like, "Did you apply to go to selection?" Yes. And so they were going to try to kick me out of the unit. And my first platoon sergeant, who was in charge of weapon squad, was in weapon squad. He had now moved to a line company, and so he was in there. And then my current platoon sergeant was in there, who definitely didn't like me. He was definitely looking to get me kicked out. And I was sitting with the first sergeant, and I'll make this story really short. They both came at me at 100 miles an hour about all the reasons why I was a piece of shit. Cool. And then finally the first sergeant said, "Ranger Tilke, do you have anything to say?" And I went with that famous line we all hear is, "Do I have permission to speak freely?" I said, "Yes." Okay, said, "Here's the reality of my situation. People get kicked out of Ranger Battalion every day, and they go to 82nd Airborne or some other unit, and next thing you know, a year later, they have 6 schools in their E6. I'm exaggerating, but you get the point, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, "But here in Ranger Battalion, if I don't get my Ranger tab, I will be a Spec 4 forever. In fact, for people that don't know, is if you were eligible to become an E5 get promoted to E5, but you had not yet achieved the Ranger tab, every month you went down and you signed a counseling statement that says is not getting promoted to E5 because he has not yet achieved the Ranger tab." So I said, I am fully capable of making it through Ranger School, but I cannot run as fast as these other dudes that are running 11 minutes. So I'm, until I find somebody that's slower than me, that's in the same, section, platoon as me, I'm never going to get a chance to get to Ranger School. So what's the point? To stay in Ranger Battalion for 10 years as an E4?
Yeah. Which you can't do. They'll find a reason to get rid of you.
Right. So they put me in the hallway. They called me back in. And basically what happened is this. They said, "We're going to switch you back we're going to switch you to a line company. You're going to Sergeant Smith's platoon. You have 30 days. If in 30 days you consistently show that you're capable of meeting the Ranger School standard, then we will let you go. And so I did, and the rest is history. And I went.
What does that mean to meet the Ranger School standard? Because you've got, it's normal business as usual. Are you always being just assessed if you're good enough to go to Ranger School before you go there? It's all the time, just constant.
Yes. But more specifically is during like intermittent PT tests, right? Because we would have them in, frequently, official record, non-official record, this and that. And so you had to maintain 80%, 18 to 21 age group, just to stay in battalion. And you couldn't go to Ranger School unless you met that same level, which I don't have it memorized anymore, but I don't know, back then it was like 64 push-ups and 80 something sit-ups or something. And
max was 75, 80 and 13. So something close to that probably.
Yeah. So when I keep saying making the standard, what I'm saying is I'm fully capable of meeting the criteria for you guys to send me to Ranger School. But there was this one guy, Brian, for example, but Brian ran 11:15. I'm not going to beat that dude. I'm not. And I was trying to get better. And I had gotten, when I showed up to Ranger Battalion, I was running 2 miles in 15 minutes. I had shaved off 2 minutes off of my time. Just to be able to get in there and stay in there, right? Because to the point I'm saying, you couldn't stay in there if you couldn't meet 80%. So anyway, that was a struggle. But anyway, I went there. That happened. I went to Ranger School, and then after Ranger School, finally got to serve as a team leader. But I didn't serve as a team leader very long before I was eligible for reenlistment. And then, as I told you, I was sitting in the chow hall, and guy came in and said, "Hey, they're offering $20,000 for the first 20 people that will learn Chinese." And I was like, "Done. Let's go."
Go back a little bit first. How was Ranger School? Was it what everybody in battalion had made it out to be, or what was it to you?
I mean, having served in Ranger Battalion for close to 2 years, like probably just shy of 2 years before I actually went. I mean, yeah, it's tough. You're getting fed crap. And we were in the cycle of class where it was 1 MRE a day. Then, let's give them 2 MREs a day because, we're not giving them enough fuel. And then wait, let's switch back to 1 MRE a day. So there was a lot of craziness with that going. So yeah, there was the freaking starvation point. It felt like starvation, and then obviously the sleep deprivation, consistent sleep deprivation and all that stuff. But as far as like the tactics and all that stuff, I mean, I've been doing it there, I would say at or above that level for a while. So none of that was like crazy to me. To be honest with you, man, my number one struggle was the run. And it wasn't even the PT test because I knew I was more than capable. It was the 5-mile run that was tough for me because, again, you had to be able to touch the guys back in front of you. And if you haven't been to Ranger School, the route back then, I don't know what it is today, you would get about 2 miles in, and there was this series of about 3 rolling hills. Like, they seemed like mountains. They probably weren't, but they felt like mountains. But they were large dip downs and large run ups. And so, and back then they say, hey, plus or 8-minute mile plus or minus 15 seconds. My buddy, who was a cadre member at that time, because he had left Ranger Battalion and decided to become a cadre, he was like E5. He's like, bro, that first mile was not 8 minutes. He's like, it was probably 6:45. So you're coming out of the gates, guns a-blazing. For me, that's like everything I had to keep up. So for me, I was like, if I can make it past the first 72 hours, not to be cocky, but I was like, I'm fairly confident I'll make it. But I got to get by all of that crazy ass beat the shit out of you first 72 hours. I mean, it's the whole first week because you have other pieces too, but the first 72 was what I was most concerned about.
And the whole time in your mind, because if you fail Ranger School, you're going back, you're getting kicked out of battalion.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you have two options: just go through and have this suck fest and graduate and go back to battalion, be welcomed back, or fail out of Ranger School, go back and get kicked out. And where would you have gone to? Third ID or something like that?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I seen guys go to 82nd. I saw guys go to 10th Mountain, 101st, Alaska.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, they'd probably push you to an airborne unit, maybe.
Yeah, it depends on the needs of the Army. But yeah, not making it through wasn't really an option because it basically, I mean, there was some guys that didn't make it through, but had good justifiable reasons, medical or whatnot, and then they would give them another chance later. But that was less often.
Looking back, you said you're proud and glad you did your time in Ranger Battalion, but were you very fond of it? Like, were you counting down the days to that reenlistment to go to reclass, or what were you thinking towards your end of time in battalion?
It was a little bit of both, man. Particularly during my end of my time in battalion, I had got the Ranger tab. Life changes significantly.
Now you're part of the group now.
Yes. Like, do you still deal with shit? Yeah, of course. But at the same level, not even close. I never went to college and I never been part of a fraternity. But, from the way it's, displayed on movies and stories I've heard, it's similar. Like, if you're a senior, you have different privileges, and life is different. Versus if you're a pledge, you are a piece of shit. And that was part of my argument during that speech with the first sergeant. Until you get the Ranger tab, you're nothing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I considered myself fairly good at my job. I was a Carl Gustav gunner, and back then I was helping to try to come up with some new ways to use some new sights in order to be able to gain better accuracy. And so I was definitely being innovative and working with other people and stuff. And I think that bode well for me too, as far as like being a value added to the organization, to the team. But without the Ranger tab, it doesn't matter.
No,
like you're still a peon. And so the answer to your question is every day was different, man. Just like everyday life. There's days that I was super loving it and being like, this is great. And then there's days that I'm like, I fucking hate my life and I want to get out of here. But that's the differentiator, going all the way back to linking the entrepreneurship to the military experiences. I think that's the differentiator between people that succeed and don't succeed, is, are you willing to persevere through all the bullshit in order to get to the place where everybody wants to be, but nobody wants to do the work?
Yeah. I talk about it as the next step in anything is a sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice to get to that next level? And that's in SF too. Oh, you're on a dive team, but I want to go do this school. Well, you're going to have to sacrifice something to go do this. And you're going to have to, if I want to go to, the special missions unit, I'm going to have to sacrifice probably a whole nother section of my life to get there, to go do that. And a lot of people, they'll comfort. I wrote down comfort here. They get comfortable in the position that they're in, and they get stagnant and they stay there, and they're not willing to give up what they have to get to that next level.
Yeah. And you talked, sorry to interrupt you, but you made me think of something. You talked about your contrast against the way I was functioning back then. My contrast against the statement that you just made is I was the opposite of that. I would get bored, right? So it wasn't about comfort for me. It was about boredom. And I was like, what's the next thing, right? I need to go after something else. And in fact, one of the greatest concerns with me going in the military was, how am I going to do one job for that long? But I think the reason why it worked out for me was because I I was able to do a multitude of different jobs. And obviously there's tons of travels and different opportunities and TDYs and positions. You know, within my first 6 years in the Army, I had been 3 separate MOSs. Think about that. I went from 11 Bravo to a 97 Echo to an 18 Echo in less than 6 years. So there was new things happening, right? Yeah. And then even then, right out of there, I went straight to the CIF, the Counterterrorism and Extremist Force, right? That was a unique venture in and of itself. And so there was constantly new things that were coming in. I think that made it new, challenging, vibrant, not bored.
It's addictive, right?
Yeah.
You have this success and you just want that to keep that rolling. And that can't happen forever. And I think guys fall into despair a lot of times towards the end of their career and when they're getting out. But it is addictive. Winning is addictive. But I kind of lost what I was saying there.
Well, I'll just say that yes, winning is addictive. Like, you know, I'm in mastermind groups now that are about entrepreneurship. You know, as the famous business consultant Jim Rohn says, you are the total sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And so for the entrepreneurial world, it's been all about the common phraseology that I use with people is you need to get in the room, right? So, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like you said something earlier about you just need 3 something in order to change your situation. Well, the one thing that my mentor always says is you are 1 relationship away from changing your life forever.
Yeah. And you're 2 or 3 bad decisions away from being in the trailer park.
Right. And so I'm saying you're 1 relationship away from changing your life forever. So when people are like, you know, I want to build this business or I want to do this venture or whatever. And great. You know, what are you doing to pursue that? Who are you talking to? You know, what moves have you made today? Right. If you're sitting on your sofa and you're thinking about it, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. And that's why I came up with this little thing I'm turning into a t-shirt, by the way. And I tell people, I put it on one of my podcasts. It said vision plus action times consistency equals achievements. So math's the only subject that I'm good at. And so I'm looking at it almost like a quadratic equation. And I'm like, parentheses, vision plus action. Cool. I got the vision. Did you take the action? Yes or no? And if you did, awesome. The next challenging piece is, are you consistent? Because very few people are going to enact on anything in their lives and have instantaneous success. Very few, if any at all. And I would even argue for them, if you peel back the layers, it didn't happen overnight per se, right? Other than literally winning the lottery. But again, that's a gift. You didn't earn that shit. You just bought a ticket. I'm talking about shit that you have to work for, right? And consistency, there's a, you know, posters and keys and books and stuff, and you see consistency is key. Well, the reason why they say that is because for the few people that are willing to take the proverbial leap of faith and put action out there, the second hurdle that typically trips most people up is they're not consistent.
Yeah.
And so they're just going to tap out and they're going to be like, peace and chicken grease. I'm going back to the W-2 job. It's comfortable for me. It's stable for me. I know what to expect. And I don't have to work overly hard or deal with adversity on a routine basis. So.
Yeah, for me, it's lately is like building what I'm trying to accomplish in the gym, right? That's if you want to be fit and strong and whatever, consistency, that is the place for it, because you don't have to be 100% all the time. And I'm not, but to accomplish some of the fitness things that I've had to, you have to eat and sleep and get this work in, and you have to put it over, because that's kind of what I'm pushing myself is when I introduce myself as an ambassador for Green Beret Foundation, I want to leave no doubt in people's minds that they're dealing with a Green Beret. There is no doubt before they even hear me speak, that dude is a Green Beret. That is the person there. And you can't build that without, that's what I love so much about it is you can't, no matter all the money or anything in the world, you can't buy that first impression that people, when they look at you, they go, that is exactly the person that I thought I'd be dealing with. And that's,
Yeah. And,
and
you know, look, man, full transparency, what you're going after and guys that have the physique like you, that was always, yeah. When I talked about not feeling worthy, like that bothered me. And did I work at trying to get stronger and stuff? Yes, I did. Did I get stronger? Yes, I did. Did I get huge? No, I didn't. Right? Did I become exceptionally fast? No, I didn't. But what I became more comfortable with is I realized that my value to the organization was my ability to be a visionary and to communicate and build relationships. And I know we're kind of probably going off on a little bit of a tangent, but
no, we're good.
this is my 2 cents, man, for whatever it's worth. When I get into special forces, I didn't even know what unconventional warfare meant. I had zero idea, right? And honestly, it took me a while before I kind of really understood what it meant. And so what I understood is that if an ODA is functioning and doing everything, ideally you're never pulling the trigger. It's about,
yeah.
Well, as Dale Carnegie says, it's about how to win friends and influence people, right? Can I get somebody else to do something on the behalf of our government? Yes or no? And if I can, well, then I would argue that that's equally as powerful as somebody who can knock down a door with one kick, right? They both have value in different circumstances. But when you think about unconventional warfare and what really the core is of that mission set, I would say having the ability to win people and influence is huge. To some extent, I would argue, I think it's number one, right? It's the core of the core.
The pen's mightier than the sword.
Right. And so, so that's why I think that I became comfortable. Like I may have went in with imposter syndrome, but realized that I had value. It just came in a different form, right? I'm not the guy that is going to carry the cart by myself.
Well, I tell people all the time, and I want to rewind a little bit. That's the perception I'm going for now from the public, right? Because the public have a perception of what we were in uniform that isn't a real thing. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to live up to that for kind of my health wise and how I like to do things. And it it reads better in first glances, right? But in group, you'd have on a team, you'll have a guy that's 6'6", 350 pounds, and then another guy that's 5'6", 140 pounds, that's tough as nails. And, he's been picked on his whole life. And there's everybody in between. And, you'll have guys on the dive team that can't swim, but they pass dive team because they just are that tough. They're just that good.
Yeah.
So everybody in between there. And there's no cookie cutter. Like in Ranger, I imagine more people fit more into a mold in Ranger Battalion than they did in SF, because SF had everybody. We had everybody of every skill, but kind of you were a certain. Was it more defined in Ranger Battalion than it was in SF?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I tell this story as well. Look, Ranger Battalion was, I just told you to take the hill, and you better be fit mentally, physically, and mentally fit to do that. And if you're not, get out. That's it. It's very cut and dry, right? But for SF, given the mission set of unconventional warfare and the autonomy in which we're allowed to work, the small group that we're allowed to work, and all the other variables that go along with that, it's a different mindset, right? And different capabilities. And so what I'm going to share this little quick story. After I left Ranger Battalion, I became an 18 XO communications sergeant. My first JSET, Joint Combined Exercise Training, with my ODA was in Malaysia. Okay, and so we went to this camp, And my team sergeant was an ex-communication guy, and he was passionate about it. And so he said, hey, you have to go make comms back. We have to do it within the first 24 hours. So you're going to go outside and you're going to make comms back to the rear. Okay, cool. I couldn't get it done because my satellite takeoff angle was like less than 10 degrees. And there was this massive mountain in front of where we were going at. So it didn't work. So then I pulled out the HF and started building antennas and get crazy, man. And I was a fairly good antenna. I built freaking, sloping V's, long wires, used freaking terminating resistor balance, like the whole 9 yards, man. I built some sexy ass antennas. Nothing. So my team sergeant said, you're not coming in and you're not sleeping with us until you make comm. So I stayed out there for 2 days. Okay. And then finally, this other guy from another team comes over and says, yo, bro, what's up? He's a 18 Echo 2. And I said, told him the story that I just told you. And he's like, why don't you just take the van and go over to the top of the hill and then just make comms from there? And I looked at him and I go, we can do that? And he just started laughing. He goes, bro, he's like, you got to stop thinking like a Ranger. Because guess what? When I was in, maybe it's changed, but when I was in Ranger Battalion, you don't need to fucking think about that shit. That's not your problem. You just need to do what I told you to do. That's it. Right? And if you do act outside of the permissions that I given you, there's consequences for your actions. Right? So, again, in mid-90s, I don't think that it was promoted for you to think outside the box or for you to make unilateral decisions in order to be able to carry out whatever your mission set was. Because typically you're there in a tactical formation, right? So that was a massive, massive mind shift for me about, holy shit, I could take this van, leave the actual compound that I'm staying in, as long as I've taken measures to ensure my safeties and security, then I can go out there for a couple hours, make comms, and come back. And no, everybody's like, yeah, that's expected from you.
Yeah, you better get it done no matter how you figure out to do it. You have to get it done.
Yeah. So just two totally, completely different mindsets, right? I mean, again, if I think back to what would have been like if I was in a patrol base and my platoon sergeant said, hey, can you go make comms? And I like just started wandering off to the next ridge line. What the fuck are you doing?
You get relief for cause there.
So anyway.
So you went to selection in 2001. Was that pre 9/11 or post 9/11? Pre. So no. Do you think if 9/11 had happened while you were
wait.
Oh,
I'm sorry. It was post. I was trying to play out the whole thing in my mind real quick. No, I went in October and graduated selection in November. Sorry.
Interesting time. That must have been an interesting time in group or in the regiment as a whole. But do you think if you would have still been in Ranger Regiment when 9/11 happened, that you would have stayed there?
Yeah. You know why? In fact, you mentioned this series that just came out on Netflix. I haven't watched the whole thing. I watched a small smidget of it because my daughter texted me. And she said, hey, did you see the new Black Hawk Down series? And I was like, no. And when I was there, the reporters would come around and they would try to do interviews, but we all got put on gag orders. And so eventually that kind of subsided and you didn't see people around the compound asking questions anymore. But man, you just said something and I wanted to link it to something that they said in the show. Repeat your question, please.
If 9/11 would have happened while you were in Ranger Battalion, would you have stayed there?
Oh, I remember what I was going with the story. So I would never say that I was sitting at home dreaming and wishing to go to combat. But after 3 years in arguably the world's most elite light infantry unit, training like a mofo on a routine basis, was I anxious to find out if all of these skills and these tactics that we had been practicing would work? Yeah, 100%. And that's why I'm saying one of the guys getting interviewed in that new series says that basically similar to what I'm saying is they were like, it's showtime, you know? And so I left Ranger Battalion. I took that thing, 9/11 happened. And guess who jumped into the first DZ? It was Charlie Company, 3rd Ranger Battalion, the exact company I was in. And I was like, and so when the news and things started coming out and they started naming people, I was like, I know those dudes. I was in the same platoon as them. And so I was frustrated because I missed out. And again, it's not like I necessarily wanted to get shot at or that I necessarily wanted to, have bad stuff happen, but I've been training for it. So, so the answer to your question is yes, if that had happened, I think I would have stayed.
I had said earlier, I never went to combat, and it's something I'll never get over. And that probably comes from every step along the way in the military and everything that you accomplish, right? And realistic training and going to a team, and with that eventual goal kind of in your mind of deploying to combat and seeing if you can test out the skills that, whether you're worth it, right? Whether you have that warrior mentality in you, and when you can apply it to in practical exercise. But the downside is, you could die. Other people can die. And you had said, if things had kicked off in Ranger Regiment, then you would have stayed there. And that's really even more so ingrained, right? In Ranger Regiment there, you guys are training to kill people all the time. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think I mentioned it, that it was the intensity of the training as well. Not to say that we don't train intense in special forces either, but you kind of alluded to it earlier, and I'm assuming from conversations you've had with many people, but it's like, it's very, no pun intended, it's very regimented, right? It's like, you're going to do rotary wing pilots, you're going to do fixed wing pilots, you're going to, all these training cycles, and it's just like, go, 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 go. Very intense, particularly pre 9/11, right? So it was always going and wanting to, like we discussed, test it out, if you will. But kind of coming back to what you were talking about and where you wanted to continue the conversation, you mentioned about that something you'll always struggle with. And I said, well, I want to touch on that as well. And what I want to touch on is that every single time. So let's go back to Ranger Battalion. I left Ranger Battalion in 99, 2001 happened. So about 2 years, but it felt like yesterday, right? So I'm like, I just missed that. If I had only stayed, right, then I would have been there. Because I went to first group, and in first group on the front side, there was some guys from Maine that went, but I went straight to Okinawa. And so, very few people initially, if any, and I was in C11, right? So we were told, oh yeah, you'll go, but it wasn't happening. And so the point I want to get to, so I don't extend the conversation too exhaustively on this particular thing, is just that I never really got to get down in the mix and the dirty stuff because I went through a divorce at we were already separated, but it was 2007 and 2006. And we constantly had been told, oh, you guys are going to go. You guys are going to go. Like, we're just waiting for the Secretary of Defense to sign the order, and it was one of those things that had happened enough times that when people would say it, I'd be like, whatever, like, it's going to happen. But then our team leader, who I was good friends with, he's like, bro, it's happening. Like, I can't tell you when, but I'm telling you, it's going to happen. And I had already been put on orders to go back to DLI because I was getting ready to go through a divorce. And so the sergeant major basically had said, hey man, how can we help you out? And I said, well, I could go back to language school and have a little bit of time to kind of just get things straight. And so I was on orders to do that. And when the orders did actually literally get signed for Charlie Company, 1st Battalion to go, my team leader and my team sergeant had pulled me aside and said, "Hey, we think that you could be, that you are value added to this. And we've been training together for a long time. And we know that you're already on orders, but we wanted to see if you want to go with us instead of going back to the States." Just to simplify it, is that I ended up doing no real like door kicking time. So I went over to Iraq for a while, and I did a lot of the sneaky poopy stuff, and it was cool, and it was fulfilling. But I relating it back to what you said, the bottom line is I just felt some like I should have wished that I hadn't missed out on some of those opportunities. But I also, I've grown a lot as far as my faith goes as well. And I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And so for whatever reason, I ended up going back to the States. I didn't end up going downrange with the team because my ex was basically like, if you do that, you're not going to get custody. Mm-hmm. And so, it was a hard decision. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it was a hard decision because I wanted to go down. To your point, I had been training. I'd known these guys at that point for 3 solid years straight on a team, all types of JSITs and shit, and waiting for the time to go down range. And I didn't want to miss that opportunity. And I knew it was going to be a good gig too. But I didn't go. And so, I have some similar feelings, about not, for quote unquote, getting in the mix to the extent that other people have, but
yeah, I have thought about it quite a lot. And a lot of the thoughts that I have that like not getting over it, are just made up in my head, because if I were to run into somebody that would think any less of me because I didn't get to do those things, well, that's just a fucking douchebag then. And I don't really need to be associated with that person. Because people that my friends, or even Green Berets that don't know me, that meet me for the first time, they're just like, yeah, nobody fucking cares, man. So, I mean, I care. It means something to me. So that's kind of something I have to deal with. But it is interesting, right? We base a lot of our thoughts on that because of the time that we were in. And maybe it is because of that, right? Because there's guys that served their whole careers not in that global war on terror, and that's not something they think about. But maybe it's just because of the years that I was in, 11 to 18. And I mean, yeah, because you were in group all of the global war on terror pretty much, right? So it's it is all a generational thing. But it's also, like I said, I did everything my country asked me to do. I never said I'm not going to do that. I went and tried to advance things as far as I could, and it just didn't work out for me. And then other guys went off and, got blown up or shot on their first day. So it's kind of luck of the draw.
Well, yeah, you just nailed it. And that's my point. From me, it's looking at it from a spiritual lens. And I'm just saying that everything happens for a reason. And for whatever reason, you didn't get to go over there. For whatever reason, I didn't end up putting on door charges. It is what it is. And yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, I agree with what you said as far as like if people want to talk trash at this point in my life, I'm just like, whatever, bro. It's all good. See ya. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't get inside my head and I think about it. Not what they're saying, but I'm talking about to myself, like you brought it up, about like feeling, I don't know, just having negative feelings about the fact that you didn't get your chance, Yeah. So.
Well, I didn't win the lottery the other day either. It was a 50-50 and I didn't win the $400 million. So, I mean, no. That's the way things work out, right? Yeah. But
yeah.
So that goes to that. But we come out of regiment, we do a brief stint in military intelligence. And for anyone listening at home, there's no such thing as military intelligence. And you see, they decide to go to selection. So was that one of those unattainable goals that we've spoke about earlier that you set for yourself? Like, I see Mount Everest off in the distance. I'm gonna go climb that. And the Army's got its path to get there. Was that one of those goals that you set for yourself and then you went to accomplish it?
At an earlier stage, it was, but the way that this one turned out is a little bit weird, and I'm happy to share it with you because it's kind of a unique story. So before I even finished human intelligence collector training in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, I had already been marinating on going to selection like ASAP. And one of the cadres had overheard and basically was like, that's kind of effed up if you do that. You're going to sit here and, get qualified, language qualified. And then, she's like, she said, that our branch pays for all that stuff. And then you're going to go ahead and just leave. Right. And nobody gets any utilization out of you. In my brain, I was like, I'm still working for the military. It's not like I'm going AWOL and taking my skill sets somewhere else. You're so stupid. But anyways, I finished it. I showed up at group. I showed up because I had came from Ranger Battalion. They sent me to group. And when I showed up at group, needless to say for us, there's not a ton of dudes showing up in the MI with a Ranger tab. And so one of the first questions was, where are you coming from? Well, I'm coming from 375. Oh, okay. So yeah, I went there and I did that job. And then what happened was they sent me to jump master school. I wasn't there but for a few months. And I don't know, they sent like 6 or 7 of us. And I think I was the only one that made it. So I got through jump master school, came back, and the branch manager had called me and said, "Hey, we did too many Chinese people. We need you to switch languages." And basically, my commander was like, "Hey, I'm not gonna let you go because I had only been at the unit for 6 months, so I needed his permission. I'm not gonna let you go because you just got here, and oh yeah, by the way, now you're airborne, jump master qualified. Excuse me." And you're one of 3 that I have in the entire company. Okay, cool. Got it. So fast forward, and I was sitting inside the office one day, and a dude comes in and says, "Hey, do you have a Chinese linguist in here?" And my E7 section sergeant leader said, "Yeah, Sergeant Tilke's in the corner." And they said, "Yeah, well, the MTO, which back then I didn't pay attention to that shit. I didn't even know what that word meant. They're like, the MTO says that he's supposed to be working in the skiff." I'm like, "What's the skiff?" And they said, "Well, you got to go down in the basement." I'm like, "That ain't happening." And so guy said, "Well, you're not getting an option." And so he leaves. And so I went up to my E7 section sergeant. I said, "Hey, you think they're being real?" He's like, "Nah, don't worry about it, dude." He's like, "They're not going to take you." I had been waiting for my TS clearance for over a year, right? And so this was like on a Wednesday. That Friday, a dude walks in a suit, and he's like, "Hey, is Sergeant Tilke here?" "Yeah, that's me." He's like, "I'm here to do your TS interview." Bro, I said, "I don't think they're screwing around. Like, I've been waiting for this thing forever, and now randomly the guy just shows up. I don't think so." And then my clearance got adjudicated ridiculously fast. And they said, "Good, you're going down in the basement." And I was like, "Not happening, man." So in first group, because you served there, so you actually know the layout, I was working in HHC, which at the time was the last closest building next to headquarters, right?
Yeah.
And the SF recruiter's office was literally like 5 doors down from mine around the corner. And so I went in there, and I stood in the doorway. He looks up and he's like, "Can I help you?" And I said, "When's the next selection class?" And he's like, it's next week in about 8 days. And I go, can I go to that? And he just looked at me and he's like, what? What I didn't know is that Sergeant Major Perry Davis, and I don't know if this was at your time because he probably was gone by then. He was around the corner, like I couldn't see him because he was kind of like tucked behind the door. And all of a sudden on my periphery, I see this guy slowly walking around. And he looks and he sees my tab and he sees I'm at E6, right? E5 at the time, excuse me. And my name is Tilke. So he goes, looks around. He's like, hey, Tickles, like, you think you can fucking just walk in here and say, I'm going to selection in 8 days? And he's like, Tickles, where'd you come from? I said, 375 Sergeant Major. Anyway, it went back and forth, a little banter. And he's like, yeah, send him. And he's like, I'm going to call down and make sure you don't make it. You can't just walk in here and say you're going to make it through selection in 8 days. Anyway, so I spent the next 8 days road marching every single morning. I didn't go crazy. I just did like 3 to 5 miles because I didn't want to destroy my feet. I just wanted to kind of get my head space in the back in the same space. But I went to selection 8 days later and made it. So, yeah, that's the story.
That's no time. That's 5 minutes in the Army. That's basically, I'm going on Monday. Bye. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, some people were just like, hey, bro, like, that's ridiculous. But for me, I had made an instantaneous decision in my head. I'm like, I'm going. And
you're going and you're going to pass.
I'm going to go and I'm going to pass. And the only way I'm not going to is if I come back with a broken leg or something. Or I'm a 26-day non-select. I mean, that's obviously, that happens as well. But, and maybe it was a little bit arrogant and naive for me. But from my perspective, I'm like, I spent 3 years in Ranger Battalion. It's not like that's a slouch organization. It's not like I don't know what hard work is. It's not like I was playing the clarinet and then I'm like, I'm going to selection in 8 days. Yes, there was a 2 year period of time in which I wasn't necessarily grinding, right? As like an infantryman or a special operations dude, but I had been through the pace. So it's not like I was clueless of what to expect. So my big thing was, and I know it sounds silly, but I road marched every day for the next 8 days, just enough to try to get myself warmed up. And then the other thing for me, this is me, I bought 26 pairs of socks. And everybody's like, you're so stupid. Why are you doing that? I said, here's the deal, man. Your feet are the number one most important thing. And I just want a nice, comfortable pair of socks. I'm going to throw them away every single day. And if I make it and you tell me that the cost of me making it was the $85 that I spent on socks, I'm good. Like, worth it. Instead of me buying 6 pairs of socks and trying to make it through. So I bought 26 pairs of socks with me.
I did not do that. I remember I brutalized my feet and was in constant pain the entire time. Just absolutely debilitating pain, taking away from concentrating on other things. Maybe that was good though. Maybe it was like, oh, my feet hurt that bad. I don't have to think about how bad my back and my legs hurt. And I just want to go home and cry. But that's the mentality, right? Is somebody that's going to pass goes, hey, can I go? Oh, it's on Monday. Yeah, I'll do that. And then I'll come back and nobody's going to stop me, because guys will go through that look like I look like now, or they'll be scrawny, or they'll be just big guys. And they make it because they tell themselves they're going to. That's more than half the battle, is getting through selection. And the Q course is the will to do it.
No, 100,000%. So my big story post 24 years in service, when I'm in and around these entrepreneurial circles that I travel in now, and these mastermind groups, and people are just so, what's your background, blah, blah. One thing leads to another, and like, oh yeah, blah, blah. And they start asking questions. My biggest thing is what you just said. It's mindset. Mindset is everything. And I'm not saying, obviously you have to have a certain level of physical fitness. Yes. But but from my experience from watching other people and actually having gone through it, the biggest thing that kills everybody is the mindset, because they're just like, I still remember to this day, dude, I was at E3 going through Ranger School in 1998. And I remember seeing two E7s on the lawn. They had quit. They had tapped out. We were on like day 2 of Ranger School. And I heard them talking to each other as I'm heading over to like hand in my administrative folder or whatever we were doing at the time. And they're like, yeah, F this crap, man. I'm like, I'm not doing this crap. Like, have somebody talk to me like that and blah, 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 blah. Now, in my mind, I'm like, where the heck did you think you were going? I don't know a single person in the United States Army that hears the word Ranger School and thinks this is going to be chill. Like, I've never, no one says that, right? So you guys, either somebody fed you a pile of crap or you just thought that your rank was going to carry weight. Well, needless to say, your rank doesn't carry any weight because nobody wears it, you know, for a reason. But anyway, so yeah, man, mindset is everything. And I went, another little funny piece about that story. This is a true story. Now, you know, again, this is 2001, post 9/11, by like 5 months, 6 months. No. I went to selection in October, got out in November. So the decision was pre 9/11. So anyway, branch manager called me on the telephone, right? Not cell phone. Calls me on the telephone and says, hey, I just received notification that you have put in for an SFAS packet and that you're going. And you owe us at least 3 years of time in branch for the fact that we paid for you to learn Chinese. And I said, I hear you, but this just isn't for me. And I want to go Special Forces. And she literally told me on the phone, she said, if you don't make it, I'm going to give you the worst assignment that I can possibly find you because you're screwing the branch.
What would that have been?
I don't know. Right. I mean, I'm assuming that I was a 97 Echo human intelligence collector. I'm assuming, much like an MP and some other types of that, they could have sent me just about anywhere, because I'm sure everybody has a need for at least one of those on their books or something. I don't know. But maybe it would be Alaska. Maybe it would have been whatever
like the Fort Polk of assignments.
Yeah, something like that, you know. But fortunately, I made it. And not only did I make it, the other thing that happened that was a rare anomaly was a buddy of mine had already gone to the previous selection class, and he was on orders to start in January of 2002. Okay. And the other thing, by the way, is I wanted to be a Delta. I said, if I can't be a Delta, then I'm not doing it. Which I was just talking shit, but it's how I felt. Anyway, so when I graduated selection, I don't know how it went down when you went, but when we went down, we all went back to Fort Bragg, Maine, and then you went into, I'm really bad with the names. I don't remember what it was called, Bryant Hall or whatever it was. And you sit down, you fill out all your administrative paperwork, and there was that one lady up in the front that like everybody knows her names because she's the one that does all the orders for people that are coming through the Q course, you know? And so she said, most likely you guys are going to get all orders for the spring or the summer. So I went up to her afterwards and I said, listen, I have a friend that's starting in January and I really want to be in the January class. And she's like, that's less than 30 days. It was like 40 something, but 30 days, you're barely going to have 30 days. And she said, if you're willing to sign a waiver saying that you understand that it's a short time suspense, whatever the vernacular is that she put, she's like, then I can make that happen. And I said, I want that. And so I got back just before Thanksgiving. And again, no cell phone back then. So I went back, and when I walked in, they're like, did you make it? The guys in my shop. I said, yeah, I made it. And they're like, dude, congratulations, right? Some of it was probably real. Some of it's bullshit. And And then they're like, when are you leaving? Are you leaving next summer? And I said, I'm leaving next month. And they're like, no fucking way. I'm like, and then I showed them my orders. And they're
Got my
like,
piece of paper right here.
holy shit. They're like, how the hell did you leave that fast? Told them the same thing I just told you. I said, look, man, there's no reason for me to hang out here, man. And that's how I've been my whole life. Again, good and bad. As I talk to people in the entrepreneurial world, I'm the guy that jumps out of the airplane with no chute and then realizes that I forgot it. So I'm not risk adverse and I'm not afraid to go. But that comes with consequences sometimes, right? In this particular case, there was no consequences other than the hardship on the family for the fact that I'm trying to out process, go to the E6 selection board and move my family all the way across the country in roughly 35 days. But I'm like, let's do it.
It probably also worked out in your favor because that branch manager, given enough time, might have found a way to screw you over for screwing her over. You know,
Yeah, that was
so,
part of my thought process too, brother. And that's why I was
so you
like,
got holiday block leave in there. Let's just get to the course, and then nobody can touch me, because
that's it.
the Army is a professional organization, but it's run by people, and those people hold a grudge. So
Yeah.
good on you there. That is another example, right? Let's just do it and get it over with, and we'll figure it out when we get down the road. So you get to the course, and did you know that you were going to be an Echo by that time, or did you still hoping you were going to be a Delta?
No, I got the Delta. I just
Oh,
didn't
you
make it.
oh you didn't make it. So
Yeah.
was the first S was SFMS still the beginning? Did you still do that 9 months before that in the course, or was it all together at that time?
Well, the first thing was anatomy and physiology. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
A&P.
because the Deltas have their course that starts in the beginning before the course proper. Is the Deltas have another course that starts before a whole thing?
To the best of my recollection, that shit didn't exist when I was going through.
Okay.
So the way it went down for me is we showed up, we went through SUT, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I finished SUT, and then I went straight into MOS, and that was the Delta course. But I didn't make it past anatomy and physiology, and it was a really sad moment for me because I truly meant what I said. Is like, I just want to be a Delta. I don't want to be anything else. I'm not interested in anything else. And a little story about that was I knew that I don't have good study habits. Like, it's taken me a long time to figure out how I learn best. And now I know, but day late and a dollar short. So I intentionally told myself that I was not going to study with other people because I didn't want to get into these little clusters and then have everybody start talking war stories and then this and that. And there wasn't no focus on the actual content, right? Because I had heard all the war stories about they're going to try to shove, 2 years of college level classes down your throat in the next X number of weeks, whatever it was, 8, 9, 12. I don't remember anymore. And so I kind of separated myself and didn't join the groups. I started doing shitty on the test, like really shitty. I was getting like 50s, and I was struggling. And it wasn't until probably about halfway through anatomy and physiology when one of my buddies, the one that I actually went through the course with, why I asked to bump up my date. He's like, dude, just come to the library and study with us. So I did. And my next test, I actually got, it wasn't great, but I got like a mid or upper 70s. So I was like, dang, maybe I should be studying with these guys. And so I did, but I didn't pass. And then I had to go to the board. In my mind, I was like, they're going to let me go on and become a Delta. And so I was sitting outside of the hallway confident, and my buddy had come by because, there was a line of us waiting to go to the board. And he comes by and he's like, hey, dude, what are you going to do if they tell you can't recycle? And I go, I'm not doing it then. I'm like, it's Delta or nothing. And so I get inside there, and the second that I get in there, I just got shotgun blasted to the face. I mean, they were just on me like white on rice. They were like, you're a piece of shit. You think that you're smarter than everybody else. You think you don't have to study. You think just because you speak Chinese at a 2+2 that you don't have to freaking learn and blah, 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 blah. And, Navy SEALs cadre member so-and-so says he would see you in the back of the room talking all the time and blah, 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 blah. I mean, honestly, I was taken so off guard. I kind of lost my footing, mentally and verbally. I was like, I don't even know what the fuck to say. Because here's the thing, I'm obviously not trying to hide anything anymore. I was talking in the back of the class, but it's because the guy next to me was a combat medic. And so like when they started talking about white blood cells and red blood cells and hemoglobins and all this other bullshit, I was like, I don't even know what the hell that means. I was like, break it down to me in layman's term, which is probably disrespectful to the cadre trying to teach the course and disturbing other people. But I was just trying to stay on, I was one of those dudes on the floaty raft behind the boat, just trying to hang on and not get flipped over, man. And so I was asking this guy. Anyway, long story short, man, short story long. They told me to go in the hallway and come back in, and the colonel or major or whoever, whatever he was, I think he was a lieutenant colonel. He's like, you have one option, and the option is you either become an echo or you're released from the qualification course. And I was like, see you on Monday. That was
over to the echo building and on with life.
Yeah.
Was that like your first real big setback, right, in your career?
Yeah.
How did you take that?
I took it hard, dude, because I hadn't filled anything. Again, you weren't never going to find me in the front of the PT class, but I wasn't going to be in the back. I could maintain the standards. I just wasn't the strongest, wasn't the fastest. But, so yeah, it sucked because I really in my mind, I had built up an 18 Echo to like this really like just amazing thing, because all I had ever heard, both in my time in Ranger Battalion and then through the process of going through the Q course and remember I was at group for 2 years. I was at group for less than a year, but that process took 2 years. So anyway, and I saw the deltas, and deltas were just held to a really high, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say, man. Yeah. Like when you hear physicians say, if it wasn't for this 18 delta, this dude wouldn't have survived. Because of the amount of trauma training that they get and their ability to be able to keep people alive. So back to your quick assessment of me and characterization of not only wanting to do extremely challenging things, but doing stuff that's rewarding, right? And so I wanted to be an 18 Delta. I wanted to be that guy that was like, dang, that guy's skill sets are at another level. So yeah, I did take it pretty hard. Yeah, I was not a happy camper, but
well, the Delta is also, Bravo, death, Charlie, death and dismemberment, Echo, we'll get comms before we kill people, but Delta is the only one where you got to do both, right? You got to train for both sides of the killing and the saving. You got to be able to feed the full mission profile on that. It's different.
Yep.
And the Delta course is fucking hard. If I was offered tomorrow to come back in, but I got to pass the Delta course, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. Smart enough, yes, but I don't know if I'm capable to do all those things. It's just a different thing. Yeah, that is probably the hardest initial entry that you can take coming in, right? And especially, at least you already spoke Chinese, so it's Mandarin and Delta on their first essential. But well, looking back, are you glad you went Echo, or were you still kind of hung up? Because once you get to group, you're like, well, I'm here and I've got this job, and it kind of worked out for the best. Or did you always think about that?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I think I was a good Echo because I've always been a tech junkie and I've always been good with electronics and stuff like that. So it probably, quite honestly, was a better fit And ultimately, for people that are listening that may not be super savvy, I was just talking to a guy like this. For most of us within the special operations community, your career at some point bifurcates, and it's either you're still solely tactical or you're more on the intelligence side, right? And so for me, I ended up getting pigeonholed into the intelligence side, but at first I had some feelings about that as well, because I was, again, the same thing as we talked about with, were you in the mix at combat or were you not in the mix at combat? And that was like, I want that check mark. I want to be able to say I was been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And so I think thought of being pulled away from high focus on tactical versus, intelligence side kind of was a struggle for me. But what I realized eventually is that I was good at it and that it still served immense value for the organization if you're good at what you do, right? And so yeah, I kind of let go of that, and then I ended up, focusing a lot on that side of the house. But I think being an echo was cool. I think it was fine. Again, I went to C11 right out of the gate, so the running joke for a lot of echoes is you're a shooter first and an echo second. I mean, people are going to say that regardless of the team, but given the mission set of that particular, company, yeah. So I'm glad I went echo. I was the last Morse code class, so we legitimately said we were the last hard class.
Did you get the T-shirt for that? You should. That should be a T-shirt. Only 4 people understand what it means, but yeah.
I did not, but I thought the thing that was interesting that I do tell in my little war stories of, military life was that it was widely known that it was highly probable that we were going to be the last class to learn Morse code. So a large swath of the people in the Echo course during Morse code time were not putting in the time. And I can't remember the general's name. I think it started with a B. It'd take me a second, but he came in when we were probably 3 weeks away from testing out to veer for Morse code. And he said, there's rumors circulating that this will be the last class. He's like, I want to validate the fact that is and true, that you guys will be the last class and no longer will Morse code be taught after this. But I also want to let you know that we're still going to hold you to the same standards. And if you can't veer 1313 by the time that the graduation for Echo comes, you're not moving on. And dude, shit bricks. Because if you've never even tried to learn Morse code, it is like learning another language. And so you either know it or you don't know it. You can't fake the funk. You can't just put C down. That doesn't exist, right? So guys were like staying overtime, like trying everything they can to try to get it in. And there was up until that point, I don't know how much you heard stories about this, but outside of Delta, the second highest attrition rate was Echoes, because a lot of people couldn't do Morse code. They couldn't veer. Well, I think our class's stats were probably one of the crappiest, because most people weren't taking it serious, because they were just assuming, because it's the last class, if I don't veer out, then they're still going to let me move forward. And he was like, it ain't happening. So
no, every one of the MOSs has their thing, right? Delta course is just hard. Echoes had Morse code and then they got rid of it. The Charlie's was time fused, but it used to be 3 seconds on each side of 0. And then when I went through, it was 5 seconds. So you got a 10-second window to pass. But I just remember thinking about, 3 seconds. That's 6 seconds. That's fucking not very much time. And then I don't know what the Bravos had. They just get shit on the whole time, though, from day one. They drop off all the weapons here. Hey, we expect you to know everything about these by tomorrow, and then tomorrow we'll have a new group of them. So yeah, fucking good luck. Also, we're gonna smoke the shit out of you first. Yeah, I just remember them having a terrible time. My friends that went through the Bravo course having just an awful time. while I just did not. My buddies that were in the Charlie course, we just kind of were chill, hanging out. Everybody was cool. The cadre were cool, and then the buddies in the Bravo course were just getting shit on, like throwing sand in each other's face, shit on all the time. And so, uh, what was it like to graduate? Do you feel like you'd achieved it, or did you know because you'd been in regiment before that now you're going to go, kind of be a new guy again? What was your feeling on graduation, getting out of there?
Well, I mean, just like everybody, of course, there's a massive sense of accomplishment. Um, Hence the reason why, again, I chose to do a lot of the things that I did because of the challenges involved in them and the difficulties. Um, yeah, I think, I'm just talking about myself. I would say for the stereotypical SF guy, I was very much in tune with the fact that I'm still going to be a cherry all over again,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, but I think even in Ranger Battalion, like the average age of a guy when I was in Ranger Battalion was like 19. I didn't even go in the service till I was 23. And by the time I got to regiment, I was at 24. So I wasn't an elder by any stretch of the means, but in contrast to a large portion of, an infantry line company, I was a solid 4 to 6 years ahead of most of these guys. And so the point and the relevancy of saying that is just that, yes, I still got treated like a private and I still got smoked all the time and had to play the FF games. But, I think at some point, your leaders, your team leaders, your squad leaders, your platoon sergeants realize, okay, he's got a little bit more experiences outside of the military and he might have a few things to work with upstairs. So, we're interested in hearing what he might have to say on some stuff. And so as it comes to showing up on a team, I think, I went through the phase of being a cheery, but I think I was also able to catch up and demonstrate value, if you will. I mean, when I went in there, one of the first things that was asked to me is, what do you want out of this? And I said, I want to be value to the organization. I want to be value to the team. And I said, and if I'm not, I would just rather somebody tell me I'm not, and then I'll move on. I don't want to hold the spot up for somebody else. And my first team sergeant was an instructor at the Echo course, and he took it really seriously. So he was constantly quizzing me and challenging me on my knowledge about radios. But I think because I knew my shit, and I was able to demonstrate that in a couple different ways, that I was able to build trust and confidence in a fairly decent amount of time. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Did walking in there with a Ranger tab as well garner you any more respect, or did it just kind of one of those things?
I can't say that definitively. I believe that, generally speaking, particularly when paired with coming from Ranger Regiment. But it's going to be one of the two conflicting things. And it's the same shit you experience as a special forces dude, right? When you go onto the general populace, you're typically going to get people looking up to you and having respect for what you've done to get to where you are. Or you're going to have people that are envious and they're going to talk shit because they're jealous.
Yeah.
Because, they want to. So, and I'm not saying that exists at high levels in a team, and I can't say it exists at all. I would just say that my opinion is, generally speaking, there are still some people out there that are going to feel like that. Like, oh, this dude came from regiment and he's got a tab already. So he feels, but for me, I've never been an arrogant, like, yeah, I know your situational environment, right? And so when I show up, I'm nobody and I got to prove I'm somebody. And I think if you take that, then it's you can typically integrate with not too much of a problem. But if you show up with a chip on your shoulder, or because you do run faster, because you do lift a lot of weight, or because you are a great rucker, or because you are, you have some skill or leverage that you think is better than most. But if you carry that shit, most people don't like that shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, nobody wants. It's okay if you're an asshole once you become friends, but right away you don't want to carry yourself in a non-humble manner. Once you become friends, you can brag about shit, but that's different. But yeah, right away, nobody likes that.
Yeah, what I always say is like confidence over cockiness. It's good to be confident, and people want that, right? But when it crosses over to being cocky, there's a time and a place where that can potentially be leveraged and bode well for you. But I would argue more times than not, humble confidence is going to take you further.
Don't you think, SF guys are cocky? It's just your general, because you were in group a long time. They are generally more cocky than everybody else. It's kind of this bro mentality in the team room.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would just say the short answer is, man, I look, because guys are going to listen to this and be like, fuck that dude.
Oh, that's okay. They can, as long as they're commenting and they like, share, and subscribe. I don't give a single fuck what they say about me, because
Cool.
I'm not out to shit on anybody. I think there's bad guys in group. There's excellent guys in group. I mean, I saw you commenting on my post this week. We both know Sean. We're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. But
Yeah.
I think I guess what I'm getting at is the atmosphere in group can be toxic to some of the things that would make us better operators, especially when it comes towards mental health. Is that something that you would agree with?
I'm thinking, look, I have such mixed emotions on two different sides and spectrums of this. And really what I'm trying to say is that I think you have to have those guys in there, right? Because you're asking them to do the shittiest of deeds potentially in certain situations, right? And so you have to have a certain mindset. You have to have certain characteristics and stuff like that. But then the thing as well, which I think we discussed earlier, you also need to be on the other side of that and be able to handle things diplomatically. And I know that's a super cliche word, but it's like a one word that I think all encompassing kind of explains what people are trying to mean, which is like you have to find certain situations where you're going to find the middle ground and you're going to get along, both on the team and I would say in many instances, and more importantly, representing the team, right? Because I know they would say it to us all the time. They'd say, you guys are a direct representation of not only the organization, but the United States Army and the United States government. And, initially when people would say that to me, I kind of shrugged it a little bit because I'm like, okay. But the reality is that's the truth, man. You go into a country and like you treat the other host nation counterparts like pieces of shit. They're going to be like, they're not just going to think you're a turd burglar, but they're going to be like, F those guys. Again, back to what we were just talking about, arrogant pricks. Like, I don't need your shit. So I guess to answer your question that you're trying to ask is like, I appreciate, and I'm sure you do too, every single person that did what we all did to get into that organization, right? Because you have to have an immense amount of willpower, determination, perseverance, in order to be able to get there. But for me personally, I've just been more of the humble confidence, right? It's not the bravado for me. I don't need to, have my head buttered to get it through the door because my ego is so big. And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, there's some people that, depending on which team they're on, or which portion they're on, or which assignment they've got assigned to, or which schools they have under their belts, that some of that stuff comes out. I'm not saying you can't be proud. I'm proud. But you don't have to be a dick. But some people are just like, I got it, so I'm going to be a dick. Okay. You do you, man.
What do you think about, though, when it comes to the veteran community? Because it's pretty competitive, or at least in people's minds, it's competitive. And, hearing veterans or of different organizations kind of trashing each other on this is that and shitting all over each other. What do you think of that? Because sometimes the brotherhood falls apart when we get on the outside, and then it's a real open market.
I think I'm just going to speak to some of the social media presence that I see, because that's, because I'm trying to market different businesses on there, then I see that stuff. And I think connecting it to the question that you're asking me is, to me personally, I think it's sad. Um, I'll tell you why I think it's sad, because I feel like a lot of dudes lean forward with trash talking instead of support. Outside of extreme circumstances, if I called you tomorrow and told you that my daughter got hit by a car, you would probably be incredibly sympathetic and you would talk a certain way, because we come from the brotherhood, and because you want to be supportive. And oh, Jamie just lost everything his own. Can I help him out? Can I link him up with somebody? Is there something out there can do that? All that stuff is good. But then I see people post stuff. We had this discussion about some comments on the post that I saw of yours. And in my head, I'm just like, the team room trash talking is cool. But at one point it's just like, dude, it's so like, just be like, I mean, you put a post out there to get people, but I also supported your shit whether you told me yes or no anyway. So even if you were like, hey, Jamie, I kind of looked at your background, I don't think it'd be interesting to have you on the show. Okay, that's cool. I respect that. But guess what? I'm still going to like your post, and I'm still going to congratulate you and be like, good job, Nick. Why? Because you're moving forward. It's the same as selection. You're taking the next step to go to another point to make your life and your family's life better. You're not just sitting there saying, woe is me, the sky is falling, I'm a victim. I'm a little bit digressing, but yeah, I think it's situational dependent, and I hate to say that, but the truth of the matter is it is situation dependent. I'm just simply saying, sometimes it's perfectly fine and cool if people want to talk trash and talk shit, but I just think I would like to see more often than not that people would be more supportive of the brothers on the left and right in whatever their endeavors are to try to do,
Yeah, I think that we do have a negative bias, a severe negative bias, especially towards the trash talking of we lean that way. That's the default, right? And it's tough to get away from that when people are posting stuff. And I know the comment you're talking about. I laughed at it. I thought it was funny. I showed my wife and I said, look at this dickhead. But, but I get it from his side. Oh, I cringe when I hear that. Like, I don't care. I put you don't know what I was thinking and all this stuff. So you got to stay out of the comments and not, but if you let those dwelling on what other people think, and you see it, right? Especially now in the civilian world, if you dwell on what one person thinks, you could wreck what you're trying to do for a vast majority of people, right?
Exactly.
You've got these big projects you're working on, and you're trying to, and you've got the vision. And I've seen that in my little thing here, right? I've asked less and less and less people what they think about it, because I'm going to advise myself, and then I'm not muddying up the waters. Is that important in what you're seeing? Because you talk to a lot of people, you're a motivational speaker, and you're trying to develop people into broadening their lives. Do people worry about what other people think way too much?
Yes. 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 And that's why I think I said it earlier. So like, I don't want to regurgitate too much information, try to give you fresh content through the duration of the discussion, but it's worth repeating this one. And that is, as Jim Rome says, you are the total sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And it didn't hit me until I really delved deep into the entrepreneurial world, right? Because in the military, the difference is we might talk shit to each other and have some differences. And there are some that are, not reconcilable, but for generally speaking, we're all working towards the same mission and the same objective. And so if you and me have a beef, but we're legitimately going downrange to do something together, like, I got your back, you got mine. But out in the entrepreneurial world, like, there's just a lot of people that want to see you fail. And here's what I recognize too. In the beginning, because you're the underdog, everybody, generally speaking, is supportive. But when you start gaining some traction, it's very interesting to see the number of people that kind of fall off.
Is that like the Superman thing? Spider-Man 2, when the Green Goblins says, they want to see the hero fall. They support you when you're nobody, but then when you get to the top, then nobody loves a superhero. Loves it more for than their hero to fall.
Yes, but I'm saying along that pathway and journey of what you're explaining, I think some people reflect on whatever they're doing in their life. It doesn't even have to be directly related, right? If you're starting a podcast show and I'm starting a podcast show, there might be some similarities, right? But you could become incredibly successful in your podcast show. And maybe I started some other business where I'm making t-shirts online, but you're gaining success and notoriety. And then somehow I have a certain attitude or perspective against that. And it changes my demeanor in which I speak to you, or the lack of speaking, or the lack of support, and this and that, because of the competitiveness and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, bro, what the fuck? But again, to your point, and I seriously do. Here's my thing. I'm here to help, man. But if you're a turd burglar, as Jeff Probst says on Survivor, I got nothing for you. Head back to camp. And I'm not going to be confrontational about it because it takes too much time. All this bickering and bullshit online with people going back and forth. There are some legit political conversations that I think are very interesting. I think there's some social, societal things that are very interesting, and economic things that I think are certain interesting. But I hate engaging with them online because I would rather have this kind of dialogue that we're having right now, where we could be in a room of 10 people and I'm genuinely interested in what those people have to say. Oh, cool. And probably going to learn some stuff. Like, I didn't know that. Well, that's interesting. But people just want to go off on these rants and they just, all this stuff online. So
do you see that in person though? Do you ever see that in person? Because internet's real easy to hide behind your keyboard, but you go out and you meet a lot of people and you do speaking events. Do you ever see that type of attitude in person?
Some, but what I'm also kind of saying is the lack of support.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. Where are you at? Which state are you in?
Oh, the great state of Wisconsin.
Cool. So if I was in Wisconsin and 9 months from now, you texted me and you're like, hey, Jamie, I just want to let you know I'm doing this expo show. It'd be super cool if you had a chance to swing by. I'm probably going to swing by unless I really have something that I can't shift around, because I just want to support you. And you can't support everybody. But what I'm saying is, but there's a lot of people out there that intentionally don't support. So rather than saying anything, they say nothing. You see what I'm saying? And that says something. And I know that sounds silly, but it's true, bro. It's like, I see you, you're good.
That's what I want for this as the core of the show, to always be the base of the show, is that as long as you were a special operations dude, I don't care if you think you're a nobody or you've got, like you said, this business, or you got XYZ, you can always come on here and hang out and talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about, your business, you've got going, or promote yourself or anything like that. I'm always trying to promote my buddy Casey over at Beret Customs, right? SF guy made my little sign out here. That's always going to be on my show, and trying to promote. I love it. I love our brotherhood and the veteran community, and it's much more satisfying, right, to build each other up. And I think some people unfortunately feed off of tearing other people down. It's like that, what we do in the shadows, that energy vampire that's on social media, dragging people down.
Yeah. And what I'm saying, one layer deeper than that, is what I've found over the past 6 years is that a lot of the people that are doing that, a large chunk of them, are people that are struggling in their own ways of lack of purpose, lack of significance, lack of, passion. And so they spend their time just trying to drag people down. And so
Yeah.
again, I don't hate you, but I'm not subjecting myself to that. It's a time hog, and I ain't got enough time. There's 24 hours in a day, man. I'm trying to find minutes every day on how I can get more shit done. And the last thing I'm going to do is sit there and argue with some schmuck online about some stupid ass shit that doesn't even matter.
Right.
It's like, even I relate it sometimes to thinking about even high school. Typically, most of us, when we went through high school, you have your cliques, right? And you have your sports people, your jocks, and you have the people that are a little bit better, more well off, and the poor people, and then whatever different thing. And I see that to some extent in some of the stuff that we experienced inside, the military, and then even getting out. And I'm just like, it's all good, man. Do your clique. So yeah, I know it's a little bit kind of like bouncing all over the place, but I'm just saying in general, I try to support as many of the guys out there that I can, particularly, I mean, for me right now, and we all have our own things that we're going after. But for me, if I see an SF guy starting a business, I try to support it, man. When we launched our first property, I hired an SF guy to make some tables around one of these pillars in one of the units. I hired another guy to do the fence. I hired another guy to make us whoobies that I gave away as gifts. Like, I try to hire as many SF guys as I could to try to support their business and their dreams and aspirations to do something entrepreneurial.
Yeah, and because you can be relatively certain, based on your knowledge of regiment, that they're probably a solid dude. You're probably pretty safe with going with that, right? And that's how I feel about a lot of guys. I was Green Beret. I know his background, and if you just hit up one person that knows, this person, and you can kind of get a feeling for who they are pretty quickly, especially in regiment, right? We're only one person separated away from somebody knowing if you're a shitbag or not.
Yeah.
One other thing, how important do you think it is as a civilian to find someone to mentor you? Because as when we're in the military, right, you're assigned someone that's going to tell you what to do, for better or for worse, right? Somebody's always going to be in charge of you, telling you what to do. But when you get out, you have to listen to yourself. How important is it when you're starting your own business to find a mentor that can kind of guide you in the ways of what you're trying to accomplish?
I think it's incredibly important. And here's why. There's tons of shit that I did on my own without anybody telling me, yo, bro, do that. Right. But the fact of the matter is, there's going to be a bunch of valleys. The reason why I have this sign hanging up behind me, I don't know if you've seen it before online.
Mm-hmm.
For the people that haven't seen it, right, you got the line up time. This is talking about what success looks like. Straight line. That's what people's perception of it is. But the fact of the matter is it's peaks and valleys. It's going through, lakes and streams and storms of all different types. And so the reason why I think it's imperative to have, I shouldn't say imperative, but it would significantly enhancing for you to have some type of mentorship is because it helps you collapse your timeline. And hopefully you can avoid some of those valleys. I mean, that's the whole point. But then the other thing is you also need people to help cheerleading you, because I tell people all the time, look, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that over the past 5 years, everything has been, peaches and cream. There has been multiple times that I've wanted to tap out. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, why am I doing this? Massive impact to the family, serious conversations to the point of like talking about walking out the door and stuff, divorce and things like that, because I got out of the military and I ended up being more busy than I was. What the hell happened? That's insane. And so I think mentorship is incredibly important because A, it's going to save you an immense amount of time. B, you need the support mechanisms. And C, as we know from our job set in unconventional warfare, relationships are everything. They just are. It's a massive differentiator, right? What do they say about a gun? Like the equalizer, right? Well, if you have a large network and you have a good reputation, that's a very, very powerful tool. A very powerful tool. Because everybody likes people that get shit done. Everybody likes people that are pleasant to be around. So yeah, I think that having mentorship is huge. It's part of the reason why, why I've kind of leaned in that direction. Because I had a moment, and I'm getting a little bit off track, but I just want to tell you this. I had a moment where, again, it was a pretty low moment where I was really thinking about tapping out on everything. And my wife was like, "What do you want to do? Like, what is it?" This is January of last year. And I just was like, I genuinely enjoy helping other people. I like it. It makes me fulfilled. If Nick comes to me pre-podcasting and says, I want to start a podcast, what's your thoughts? How would you do? Dude, I would sit down with you for 3 hours and not even bat an eye. I would be like, dude, have you thought about this and this and this and blah, blah, blah? Because I get excited about it. I like the vision. I like that. And I want to help you and I want you to succeed. The problem is if you don't get paid for it, then I got to get a job. So I guess all that just to summarize, basically saying I kind of shifted where I still do try to help. I've had a handful of SF guys reach out to me here locally because I am at Bragg, and they're like, hey, dude, can I come over? And they come over and we talk for a little while. But if I do that all the time, which is what I was doing really frequently, that's where I was sacrificing forward momentum on the other aspects of my businesses because I was allocating too much time. And the other thing is entrepreneurship is not for everybody. And so some people were just kicking tires. And I'm not hating you for kicking tires, but it's just frustrating for me because I'm like, dang, I just gave 3 hours away, 5 hours away. But the reality is you really weren't considering it, So anyway, hopefully I answered your question.
I think you did. Back to Japan. You said everybody gets kind of pigeonholed but your career bifurcates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of those ways is intelligence. So you spent, what was it, 5 years as an Echo, you said?
8
years in an Echo?
2003 to 2011.
2011. So, okay. So when did you get back to First Group proper on base there, JBLM?
Well, that was part of the divorce and the not going to the Cree mission that C-11 had for 2007 in Iraq.
Yeah.
I went back to DLI and I was a single parent and I had all 3 kids at DLI, which is a separate story. That was insane. Because for people listening, they may not know, but it's a very what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's
Intense.
it's academically challenging.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was there and I had applied to become a warrant officer, and the CW5 in charge of group at the time had called me when I was at DLI and said, hey, I want to let you know that, you've passed the preliminary board review to go on to become a warrant officer. we think you'll do a good job, but I have some concerns, and my number one concern is that I heard you're going through a divorce, and when you get back here, I want you to know that immediately my plans were to send you on a 6-month deployment with a team, and then you would spend a 6-month deployment immediately following that on an embassy rotation. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, so I'm telling you that because I don't know how that's going to work out with you being a single parent. And so he said, I'm going to give you 24 hours to think about it and then call you back. So he did, and called me back, and he asked me what my thoughts were. And I said, as much as I want to do it, I think it would be shitty for me to do that to my kids right now. So I said, what I'm asking is, can I have 1 year of stabilization? I just need 1 year of stabilization. And he's like, okay, well, what do you want us to do? I go, well, I said, I don't know what my options are. And he said, well, there's this new thing. This is 2008. There's this new thing we're standing up called the OPSTET. And they're basically going to be a bunch of sections that basically train different aspects of things that we're doing in group. And so that might be an option. So we're going to send you back here to Group Maine. So the answer to your question is I went back there after DLI in 2008. And then I showed up there, and coincidentally, I hadn't even fully signed in, and I was at the commissary, and my C11 sergeant major was in the commissary, and he's like, Jaime. He said, are you back here? I said, yes, Sergeant Major. He's like, dude, he knew I was a tech junkie. Yeah. And so he's like, dude, I am standing up this new thing inside the OPSTET, and I super bad need somebody to be a tech guy for all of the, I don't know if it's classified names, so I'm not going to say it, but anyway, all this stuff that we're doing right now. And he's like, you're the perfect guy. And he's like, are you interested? He's like, it's totally, we're standing it up and this and that. So he was basically just telling me, we're standing it up so you don't have to worry about like going down range 100 times. Well, that didn't happen. So I said I gladly accepted, and I went there, but because I am who I am, which is part of the problem, I volunteered for a lot of shit because I thought it was cool, and because I don't want to just sit there and do nothing, right? Like I can't, that's just not who I can't be a slug.
Yeah, especially like if you've got anything remotely negative going on in your personal life, you'll just bury it with every other task or school or anything you can do in the military, right?
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly what I did. In fact, we're jumping too far ahead, but I'll just tease this maybe for part of the conversation, or if we don't get there, that's fine. But later on, I had a commander prior to me getting out say to me that he intentionally asked me a specific thing that he knew I wanted at a specific time. And they had a wager going that there's no way that I would say no, because I can't say no, because I always want to solve the problem. And I did say no. And he said, A, I'm very proud of you. And two,
you lost me $15,000.
Yeah, not 15 grand, but maybe it was a venti Starbucks or something. I can't remember. But he lost the bet because I said no. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. But anyway, it was really enjoyable. It was great. I got to stand up a lot of that stuff and support that cell and things. And I ended up going to a lot of training cycles initially. So that was why I was also gone a lot. So it was almost as bad as being deployed. Like being deployed, you can come up with your stuff and be gone for 4 months or 5 months or whatever. But this was like, hey, you're gone for 2 weeks, come back. You're gone for 4 weeks, you come back. Hey, you're gone for 3 weeks. Luckily, I had a really good support mechanism, and I was staying with my sister at the time. And so when I would leave, the kids would just stay with her, and they would help facilitate everything. But yeah, so that was at Group Maine, and then I stayed there, and I went down and stood up the RSEs before they were called that. And then eventually, when they transferred over to the 4th Battalions and stuff. But by that time, I had reapplied to go warrant officer in 2011, and then I went warrant.
It is, as you said that, you can't say no. That's a common thing in SF, right? If somebody asks you to do something, you want to make it happen, even if you don't want to do it. You just go, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that too. Okay. Do you think you feel like as you go along in the military, you get to a certain point where you can't say no because you don't want to let anybody down, even though it'd be at great personal risk to your sanity? You'll just have to do it. You have to continue the mission. You think guys fall into that circle of a never ending? It's never enough, and I can't say no.
Yeah. People said a lot of people serve because they're part of something that's bigger than themselves. I think that is the case for a lot of us, whether you understand in that subconsciously or cognitively. I think a lot of people, there's fulfillment in that, right? It's not a unilateral thing. You might be doing something unilaterally, but it's for the collective group of the whole. And so that's cool, right? Because if I do something that helps you win for all of us, then that's great. But yeah, I think a lot of people, anybody that cares about their reputation and wants to be valued, you're going to struggle with that. And, I think there's some deeper stuff for me specifically because of my childhood. I think that I don't think I've come to my own personal realization that I believe that this is true through some heavy reflection and stuff, is that I think that I was always trying to prove to everybody that I was good enough and to myself. And so that's why I kept picking crazy ass shit, and that's why I would continue to say yes to these other missions, is like, look what I can do. Look what I can do. Look what I can do.
Are you still doing that?
I think I've pulled back from it some. We lost a child last year, and that was rough. So when you go through shit like that, it's you rethink shit, because and I lost my sister like, I don't know, 3 years before that. She's younger than me, by the way. So it's like you just have one of those moments, just like many guys do on a team when they lose a buddy, is like, none of us are promised tomorrow, bro. None of us. So what the fuck am I doing? And everything's, what's done is done, but I try to be a little bit more cognitive of that question that you just asked right now. But the answer to your question is, am I better about it? Yeah. Do I still do it? Yep. It's part of the reason why when I started off my story with you, it's part of the reason why we're in the situation we are right now. Because I'm like, I got it. The only difference between Jamie Tilke and the United States Army or the Special Operations, Special Forces Group is that I don't have a budget of $800 billion and I don't have a team of hundreds or thousands of people on my left and right that I can delegate tasks to. So, I have these big audacious goals and I don't lack vision and I don't lack clarity. But I might need some extra help on the side. And so that's the part that was a struggle. So yeah, I tend to still do it, but I'm getting better at it. And right now, in fact, this shirt, see this shirt?
Declutter. There it is.
Yeah. So I made this shirt for myself because my mantra for 2025 is declutter. And on the back, I don't know if you can see it.
It's your
It says focus, right? So the whole thing is, let's declutter all the bullshit. Let's focus. As I recently told some people, I said, my business life is a fucking hoarder's house. So I said, imagine if you go into a hoarder's house and there's not even a pathway to walk to the bathroom. So all of it is for me right now is like declutter. Let's find out a path to the bathroom and the other bedrooms. Then let's start putting shit away. Let's get rid of what we don't know. I would be so much further along if I wasn't trying to spread myself so thin. So right now the focus, and not only that, but obviously, you know, when I get choked up there a second ago and stuff like that, it's like, what's the impact? What's the second and third order effects on the familia, right? And how much time do I have left? Because it's like tomorrow. Well, I know there's a song about it, but what if tomorrow never comes, right? And so right now, that's exactly what I'm doing, man, is I'm downshifting from 6 to like third gear. I want to make sure that the tires aren't bald. I want to make sure the oils are topped off, all the fluids are topped off, and figure out where is it that we want to go, what I want my life to look like, and then I'm going to pursue it again. I'm not leaving it, but what I'm saying is I'm cleaning up the roadway.
Yeah, I like what you said, but it's too bad that experience takes so many years to garner, right? It just takes all that time, and then so a lot of those lessons are hard. But I look at, no, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. Will we get there? Most likely, and then the odds drop off every day after that, right? So one thing people, when they'll say, oh, because I present my fitness in a certain way, right? And guys will say, oh, I've been meaning to get back into that, or I've been, I really want to get back in the gym. I say, oh, great. Do 15 push-ups, 15 sit-ups, and 15 air squats right now. And then tomorrow you can worry about what you're going to do on day 2. And that, like, it totally kind of switches people's mindset, right? Of like, I need to do it today. I don't need to start on Monday or do this thing. If it's that simple of a thing, let's just do a little bit and work on the plan as we go along. But you're right. Yeah, we can't take on too many things. Otherwise, we'll break down. And that happens to guys in group, right? They'll just work themselves into an early grave because they don't want to deal with stuff in their personal life, and they don't want to deal with their problems, and they want to bury it. And then the military ends one day, right? Because it's going to end whether we like it or not, and you're going to either retire or ETS or get out, and it's not going to be there for you.
Yeah.
What was that moment like for you? Because you said you turned down that position that you really wanted to do. That must have been a tough choice for you, because you would have had to sacrifice another chunk out of your family life, right, to make that happen. What was that like to finally say, no, that's where I draw the line. I'm tired of making that sacrifice.
If I didn't have the entrepreneurial aspirations I did, I probably would have took that, if I'm being honest. I would have sold it, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
I don't think I've publicly admitted this before, but I definitely consistently put my job before the family because I wanted to perform, right? For the betterment of the organization, to prove to myself all the stuff we've already talked about. So, when I came back from one assignment that I had been given, doing some stuff around the embassy, I was back, I don't know, a couple weeks. And the commander comes in the hallway and says, we're walking down the hallway, and it says, I know you just got back, but we really need somebody to fill in the backside. And he's like, if you don't want to do it, got it. We've asked a lot and you've been gone a lot. but if you want to do it. And I said, yeah. So I left again. So 2015 to 2017, including schools and other stuff that happened, I was gone over 300 days both of those years. It's crazy.
What battalion were you in? Were you in battalion? Which battalion at that time?
1-1.
Oh, you were back. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was enjoying what I was doing because, you know, and I've told this story before, but that last gig for me was one of the, if not the most fulfilling thing that I ever got to do. And here's the reason why. Because for the first time in my experience, I was not only given a massive amount of latitude, but full confidence in the fact that I was going to achieve what they needed me to achieve. And so working in that type of environment was just, it was awesome, you know? And fortunately, I did achieve the results. I had exceeded the results that they wanted. I was told if you can get X, Y, and Z, any one of those X, Y, or Z, then we consider it a success. And I came back with X, Y, and Z. And they're like, no way. I'm like, yes, I did. And they're like, dude. And so I was riding a wave pretty high at that point, as far as like, you know, I was routinely having my name mentioned during, you know, the Sock Pack Commanders, you know, weekly sit rep with 1-1. And so that was a great feeling, because I not only was achieving the mission, but, you know, people had noticed it. So, so yeah, it was really, really good. So that's why when I got back from there and was offered that position, I had to make some decisions about what we wanted to do. Sorry, something just popped up on my screen. I don't know why that did that. So yeah, I just decided that I was going to go after the entrepreneurial stuff.
Do you feel like you made the right decision when you look back on it, or does it linger like, oh, I could have done more, or did you have any bandwidth left?
No, I think it was a good decision. I mean, sometimes I, like the other day, I was just thinking, you know, I would have hit 30 years if I had stayed in. November would have been 30 years for me. But a lot has transpired, honestly, and I keep referencing the spiritual part. My spiritual growth has happened a lot since I came back to the States and stuff, and I don't think I would be where I'm at right now. And so I'm very grateful for that. It's also been a very unique experience to do a lot of the entrepreneurial stuff and kind of see how that correlates to life in the military, you know?
Yeah.
So no, I'm good. I think the only thing that I have a little bit of regret about is I retired in March of 2020, which, as you probably know, was literally, I got my documents, no bullshit. I got it the day before they announced that everything was shut down and nobody was no longer coming to work anymore. Because they were trying to get me to leave that day over at the soldier support thing. And here I am, a CW3 with 24 years in service, sitting on the floor in my freaking uniform, waiting for somebody to call. I waited there for over 3 hours because they're like, you're going to have to come back. And I said, I am not coming back. I said, I have no idea what's going to happen. I need one signature from your office and I am out for the rest of my life. And yeah, I was like, I'm not coming back. You're signing the paper. Anyway, luckily they signed it and the rest is history. But my regret was just that I was so caught up in building the entrepreneurial path that I had in my head that I was already moving like at 100 miles an hour on that. So I didn't have a retirement ceremony. I didn't say goodbye to nobody. I didn't do any of those things that most of us do as we separate from the military. And so I kind of had a little bit of an emotional moment as I was walking out with that paperwork signed. I sat in the car just for like, 5 minutes, and I was like, it's over. There's no farewell. There's no hoorah. I didn't shake nobody's hand. My family didn't get recognized. And nothing stopped. Like that day I was working on real estate investing, and the next day I was working on real estate. And when the whole pandemic was happening, I still went to work every single day. There was no time off, like every day. In fact, I was working double, triple time because we were in the process of renovating structures, and I didn't need, I wasn't working a W-2 job, and that work wasn't going to stop. I didn't need permission to go over and stop renovating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just wear your mask. But yeah, I know what you mean about, because it sounds like, I was only in a little bit compared to you, about a third. But I remember I stood right at that desk and medically retired, and he hands me my documents, and I was E6 promotable. And so if you retire as promotable, you make the next rank on your retirement papers, right?
Oh,
and the
cool.
guy hands me that was my final. I gotcha out of the military. So he hands me his stuff, and he signs my thing, and I said, this says staff sergeant. And he says, well, you're wearing staff sergeant, right? I said, no. Here, look at my orders and all this. And I said, can you redo it? And he's like, no. And I said, does it really matter? He says, does it really matter? It's like, yes, it fucking matters. You're wearing a veteran hat right now, you son of a bitch. Of course, it matters to me. And he kind of threw a fit, and he went back and he redid it. I came back an hour later, and I walked out of there because I have it in my garage, hung up, Sergeant First Class Ward. It doesn't mean anything to anyone except for me, right? And I'm glad I got it, but there's nothing. Nothing. My unit was gone. I didn't get anything when I left. Just kind of, I had already signed over all my responsibilities months before, and I just left, and it was over. And I really thought it was over, right? With the community, like when I was done, and so here's my segue in there. Sean Arntz commented on my picture that I posted. He said, you're never not a Green Beret, or something like that. How do you know Sean? He was my Charlie 3rd Battalion Sergeant Major.
Him and I went through the Echo course together.
So yeah, he's retiring at the end of the year. So yeah, you would have hit 30 years, because I think I saw his post about claiming to be the last Echo in the military that could do Morse code or something like that.
Probably right.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, no, we bonded some during the Echo course, and him, and a couple other dudes that we stayed in pretty good contact throughout most of our military career. And Sean recently I say recently, it's been a couple of years probably by now, but he had stopped by Fort Bragg, and because I'm here, that's the one good thing about being here is it's easy to catch guys when they're coming through.
Everybody goes through Fayetteville. It seems like I even go through sometimes, and I'm not going there for stuff. It just seems to happen through everybody. For some reason, there's a big magnet there, and SF guys just are attracted to Fayetteville for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
No, I can't wait to have him on the show. Countdown's on. I got him penciled in for January 2026 after he's all done, being where is he at? Down in Florida now. So I'm excited to have him on. And it's like I said earlier, that 1 degree of separation. If Sean says you're okay, you're probably okay.
Yeah.
Now we transitioned out. We're into the veteran status. How, you said you were going 100 miles an hour, and I guess we probably, already touched over it, but this is me transition material trying to wrap things up. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you did everything that you set out to do when you were in the military, did you accomplish that unrealistic goal that you had set for yourself when you decided to go into the military? Were you satisfied with the level of accomplishment?
Yes, but funny thing is I was actually I don't want to say mentoring, but counseling or having a conversation with a active duty Green Beret guy right now that's transitioning out yesterday. And we ended up getting into a conversation, and basically it kind of culminated at the point where I just said, look, typically on our deathbeds, the only things that we really regret are all the things that we never did, and so I said, I wanted to go to scuba school and I never went. And I didn't go because I knew I wasn't the fastest runner. And I just assumed that it wouldn't work for me. Right. Even with all the stuff that I told you about, oh, I'm going to go in 8 days, or I did this and I did that. Like, that was the one thing that was, like, in my mind, unattainable. Right. But I had periods where I was like, no, I can do it. Right. But I never 100% sent my mind to it. And so I didn't. But other than that, yeah, there's other things that I sometimes wish I could have done. We talked about, not getting in the mix, things like that. But generally speaking, I'm very proud of my military career, not just because I served, but because I think that I navigated it fairly well. And I wanted to try new and exciting things, but I also didn't want to be a turd burglar. So some people, maybe from their perspective or lens, they're like, this guy's all over the place. But I don't think I went any place and was just like, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to sit here until it's my time to leave. So, yeah, no, I enjoyed it, man. And I'm glad that I did it. And 3 of my kids went in the service, and my daughter's still active duty. My son's still active duty. The third one is about ready to go back in. He got out and decided he needs to go back in, so he's probably leaving in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, it's cool. I was able to be active duty and pinned the airborne wings on my son and went to their basic trainings, graduations, and stuff. That's all cool.
I mean, that's got to be a good feeling, right?
Yeah.
You get to go, it's your guys' turn to deal with this mess. I'm done. Fuck that. I'm not going to have to do that shit anymore. No, but that's cool, man. I like that. I do like what you said about dive school, though. But mine is the almost inverse of what you said. In my current life, I train like dive schools on Monday, but there is I have no reservations in my mind at all, with even as good a shape as I'm in, that I could pass dive school. I could try 10 times in a row, and I don't think I could pass dive school. I don't think I could ever get to where I wouldn't freak out in the water. And I train in the pool 3 days a week just because I'm afraid of the water. And I put all this effort in it, and I still look at the vents and little stuff. And I'm like, I still can't fucking do it. I still can't do it.
That's part of the reason why I'm sad I didn't do it, because I consider myself a fairly strong swimmer. And I, in fact, did pass all the strong swimmer courses that were thrown in front of me. Yeah. I was a good swimmer and I enjoyed swimming. And much like many of the other things, just I wasn't afraid of the water at all in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that ever stopped me was the running. Because when I was in Ranger Battalion, all I ever heard was, if you can't run a 10:32-minute mile, you're never going to make it through scuba school. And again, in my mind, I was like,
10,
it ain't
a
happening.
what?
10:32 mile.
Who the fuck told you that?
Just war story. Again, I'm a private. I'm listening to what people are saying. And
you know what? I'm going to make an off the hand assessment here. Is you would have had a great career could you have run faster. That's what I'm going to boil this whole thing down to. If you could have just run a little bit faster, you might have been successful in your military career. But it's too bad you let things go on the wayside.
Thanks,
terrible,
Nick.
terrible. No, man, it always comes up. I think for some reason the run thing always comes up. But if you can run less than a 13-minute 2 mile, fuck, that's better than 99.9% of the military, right? And when we minimize the great things we do, but
Yeah.
it's because all these things on this episode, right? These crazy assignments and the things that you've done, we minimize all these great things that we do, and the ways they could have gone better. And I do that to myself, right? Had a great career. It was a really short, and it went by way too fast. I feel like I was in basic training, and then I was walking out with my papers the next day. It was way too fast. And we accomplish these great things. And looking back, do you agree with that? We need to be more proud of what we did instead of focusing that negative bias on what could have happened or could have done.
Well, yeah, of course. And I think I do, generally speaking. I mean, I think we have moments, right? But I mean, I know you're transitioning towards closing this down, but I'm just gonna peel back a little bit to the last conversation and connect it to
Let's do it. 3 more hours. Let's go.
You asked me a question earlier, and you said, "Do you think that do you think that you would have?" I can't remember the verbiage, but you asked me about if you thought that there was a certain circumstances in which I would have taken that job, right? Had I not been afforded the opportunity to do that one mission where I said I was able to gain some great, accolades from mission accomplishment, I probably would have still stayed in, and I probably would have retired at 30 years, because that was the plan. The plan was I was going to do 30 years and retire with 75%. And the pitch that I gave my wife was this: listen, 75% of a W-4's pay for the rest of our lives, not to mention, if we get any type of disability, like, we're good. We're not going to be flying on private jets, and we're not going to be owning a yacht, but we're not going to have to worry about whether we can eat tomorrow. So I said, it's a pretty damn good place to be in a time where virtually nobody offers pensions anymore. So I'm like, let's do it. But it was the success from that. And that kind of, I told this story on my own podcast, and what I will say, I'll give you the Cliff Note version, was in the midst of all of doing that stuff, I had to go back to sock pack quite frequently. And one time I was sitting there in the hotel room, and I don't want to embellish the story. Obviously, for people that don't know, there's tons of things happen behind the scene that were supporting what I was doing, but I was the face, if you will. I was the one negotiating and changing the environment and the atmospherics in that particular place. And so I was just sitting there, and I had this moment where I'm like, dude, this goes back to the reoccurring theme that you've heard me talk about with taking on challenging things, and am I good enough? Right. And I sat there and I had this moment, and I was just like, this dude who grew up poor as shit with no house and sometimes no food, and I'm not college educated, am literally rebuilding and negotiating a relationship between the United States ambassador, a 2-star general, and our organization. How fucking crazy is that? That's crazy. And so if I can do that for this organization, why can I not build a multi-million-dollar empire? That was the question for me. Because as I told you before earlier, I had been fiscally irresponsible. And while I had re-educated myself on what it means to be fiscally responsible, I had to figure out, how do I make that happen? And working on my W-3 pay, I didn't see an end in sight. And so while as shiny as that carrot was dangling in front of me when they offered, I had to remain steadfast in my fact of, you have to get out. You have to take what remaining time you have in your mobile, your mobility and your intellectual capacity, and you have to build something so that you can build generational wealth for your family. Because I'm not going to be the piece of shit that left my family a bunch of debt because I decided that I needed to get the newest model car or whatever, pick whatever items you want. Point is just being fiscally responsible. So yeah, kind of just linking that back to what you just said is, I'm content, man. And, I'm very proud of my time, and I'm very proud of my service. I'm very proud of my time in regiment because every day was a challenge. Again, I'm not trying to pit the two organizations against each other, but every single day in Ranger Regiment, I knew if I didn't perform for PT at the highest level, it's over, right?
Oh.
Or the level that they expected from me at that day. So anyway.
One scenario that could have happened, and maybe you can, because I'm curious, do you know at a certain point when you're so you were warrant officer 3, did you have an inkling, or is there some indicators from people that are in charge of you? Because I don't really know anything about that world, that you will or won't make CW5. Is how does that path look like? I'd like to know. I'm curious.
Well, 5 is a different category in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
But I felt very confident on 4, and not because I'm that awesome. It was just that I had done a good job and I had a good reputation, and a lot of people had tapped out. And I was also, in this unique situation where I was in the last warrant officer class where you got promoted after the first 2 weeks to CW1.
I thought you were going to say Morse. I thought for sure you were going to say Morse code.
No.
For sure.
No, but it's funny because, again, there's these little reoccurring themes throughout. But no, so what that means is, and then the next class after that had to finish the entirety of the course, which is roughly just shy of 4 months. So the next class didn't even promote until like December of that year. So technically we were like in this different year bracket. So as people start retiring, the pickings become much slimmer. So anyway, I felt very confident that I would have no issues getting picked up for 4. And I also felt, at the risk of sounding slightly arrogant, I felt like I would have been very competitive for 5. So, but to
you
pick
could
up,
still be in. If you would have taken that, you could. There's a chance that you'd still be in.
Not only the chance that I could still be in, I could have went past probably 30, because the way that the warrant officer promotion cycle, and it may have changed since I've gotten out, but they were very stringent about the fact of you will be looked at 4 years and picked up at 5. Those are the incrementals between the ranks, right? 1 to 2 is 2 years. 2 to 3 is 5. 3 to 4 is 5. 4 to 5 is 5. So remember, I told you I didn't go until I was 16. So do the math. That's 15 plus 2 is 17. That means I would have had to been at 33 years before I could have pinned 5. So I would have gotten 4 before 30, and I would have probably gotten 2 years, potentially squeezed in 3, but I would have had to go past that in order to get 5.
Yeah, it's curious. I mean, I guess in the senior leader things, it kind of follows the same thing, because Sean said that he took the job down in Tampa, and then people ahead of him just kept retiring, and he's like, well, I'll stay in and do this one, and then somebody else would retire. Well, I guess I'll stay in and do this one. And now he's finally done. But yeah, that does make sense. But yeah, you could still be in. One decision away from either living in the trailer park or being the command chief warrant officer at group. Is that still a thing? Is that the position?
It is. Yeah. I don't think that I was as focused on that per se as maybe other people I've seen, but for me, definitely 4. I was like, that would be cool. And that's really good retirement too. I think the only reason why sometimes I kind of wish I stayed in is because my kids are in. And literally my daughter is at first group,
Oh,
right? So
that's
how cool would
badass.
that have been? And my son served at first group too.
Yeah, you can
Um,
do that jump, that family jump you see every once in a while on social media.
right.
That's
I mean,
pretty
all
cool.
those type of things.
Yeah.
And plus, it's just it's one of those cool things. I mean, again, at one point, three of my kids are in, so it's like people are like, "Oh, dang, you
You
got three
fucking
kids, and
old, dude.
they're all at group." Um, so, but it's all good, man. I mean, there's been a lot of cool things that I've been able to do, and um, I think for the kind of person that I am and the reoccurring theme that we've been talking about, um, it bodes well for entrepreneurship, but
Yeah.
it's also very dangerous for a guy like me because I'm going to consistently put myself um, out there. And as you mentioned earlier, just completely pack your day and your schedule and you're constantly doing shit.
One thing, let me see if I can word this to where it doesn't say too much, but it makes sense as a question, right? So, towards the end of your career, or here, what the general population, right, has a understanding of what special forces does, right? Because what do they hear on the news? You were in a your career had taken you in a different direction outside of what the general public can understand about what you were doing, right? It's not something that's generally known. How much shit is going on behind the scenes in the military that people not only do they not understand is happening, they don't understand what they don't understand is not happening. How much of that shit is going on?
A lot, a lot. Look, um, I had some conversations with some family members. Well, I'll just be very specific about one. I didn't grow up with my father. I grew up with my mom, and and I was in a house with four females, and so there was no dad figure. The joke that I tell people, and I maybe said it earlier, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I said, don't ask me to fix your carburetor and don't ask me to watch sports, but I can bake cookies and I know how to sew pajama pants. So if that's cool, then cool. Um, so my point of saying that though is, in the latter part of my life, I've gotten to see my dad a little bit more. We've built a little bit of a relationship and stuff, but there's definitely a difference of perspective on a lot of geopolitical things. That's cool. We can still have a relationship and don't have to go deep into it, but um, it kind of goes to the point that you just asked. And there was one particular time where it got a little bit probably intense, and I was just like, listen, all I can tell you is that you are a product of your life and your circumstances and your environment and the people that you associate and how you're fed. Um, I've literally lived in 20 plus different countries, and I define living as we were there at least 3 to 6 months and not hanging out in the airport, but in and around the indigenous people. So cultural awareness and seeing all these different things obviously gives you a lot of reflective points on what it's like to be an American and grow up and all the other crap you see. Um, and so to your point, what I basically was saying is there is so many things that you guys have absolutely no clue about. There's shit that I have absolutely no clue about. But I would say I definitely have been fortunate to be a little bit closer to some of that information in certain situations and perspectives and see how is the sauce really made, right? And so I think that some of your perspectives and viewpoints are aligned because all you've seen is what you've seen on the media, which obviously over the past 4 to 8 years has become a massive thing. Those conversations about media weren't talked about 8 years ago the way they are today. Um, Not even close. So the answer to your question is there's a tremendous amount of it. A lot of people don't know what they don't know. Um, and that doesn't mean that it's always necessarily right. And it doesn't mean that I always necessarily agree with certain things. Uh, but as I said to my mom during our weekly cup of coffee the other day, uh, you control the controllables, and we have to hope that the people that are making the decisions are doing the things on their best half. And where applicable, yes, you can do something about it. But the harsh reality is, in many instances, there's nothing you're going to do about it. You're just
None.
not.
No. You have so little control about anything you see in the news or on television that nothing. You have no control. Well, you can control this right here,
Yeah.
maybe out to here, but outside of that, no. And I think people would be better served to at least have an understanding or to know what they don't know, but to not even know that you don't know something and then make your opinions on how life should be and how things should run is a detriment. So, but that comes
Well,
with
that
experience, right? Is a lot of people don't have the bandwidth or anything to take in all that information and to have that perspective on life.
but that's the problem, Nick. It's not just that. It's the fact that um, they only know what they've seen and heard, and so they're
Mm.
making their assessment on that. You know,
And people
like
lie.
I talked to my kids. I said, listen, because they're in the service and they know. So I was like, there's secret clearance, there's TS clearance. What most people don't realize is there's multiple levels to that TS clearance. I didn't know that shit before, right? And good, bad, or indifferent, I was fortunate / unfortunate, when I did some of the stuff with USASOC to be read onto a bunch of stuff that, quite frankly, I'd rather that I didn't, because I don't want to know, but I did. So, and so when that's the proverbial you, right, are making, to your point, all of these things based off of these little glimmers of what you've seen on there, or while you're drinking tea and crumpet with your fucking friends at the golf course, like, bro, like that's not reality. That's their reality. Um, and so that's why I tell them, like, I'm not going to sit there and give you a dissertation on every single thing that I may or may not have witnessed, but I'm just telling you, I don't concur with your viewpoints, and they're based on my real life world experiences of what I've done. That's all I can tell you. And I'm not saying, and I'm talking about when I have those conversations with, and I'm not saying that, I got it all figured out, and I'm not saying that I've seen everything, because I haven't, and there's tons of shit I don't know as well, a lot. But
I don't know anything.
compared to most people, as you talked about with the running, I've probably been privy to a lot more information than probably 99% of most people get privy to.
Yeah, I would say that you probably went farther and did more than all those people that could run faster than you at regiment or at battalion, Ranger Battalion. So, fuck
Yeah.
them, right?
Well, that's why I love that you brought up mindset. I think mindset and work ethic are two listen, those are the queens, man. The bishops, you can call them whatever piece you want on the chessboard. But a lot of dudes think that they're kings or rooks, but they're freaking pawns. You're going to take out one person and you're out. So, and here's kind of my final departing comments on special forces is, like, I think I said this earlier as well, but I legitimately had no effing clue what the heck it meant to be a special forces soldier. And then you go through the training and you learn and you understand, and okay, we're doing unconventional warfare. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I understand that, but I don't know if I really get it, right? And then there's, at a certain point, it just clicks. And I just yeah, I'm trying to think about how to put it into words.
I'll say I don't think I don't think I knew what it was like. I think I know more now after years after being out than I did even while I was in, because it was going by at 1,000 miles an hour, right? And you're just trying to climb that hill. And when I finally got even remotely close to where you start to settle in at it was over. So I didn't even gain that appreciation for what I have until I got out, or even an understanding of more of how things worked. So I think we're always learning, right? And improving on what we could do. That's why I do
Yeah.
this. That's why you do your thing.
Well, that's that's where I was kind of going with it, is that because I probably matched the timeline that you said. It was probably a time around the time where I left Okinawa and then really was transitioning and coming back into the Opstet and stuff, where I really started to feel like I understood at a much deeper level what it really means to be a SF guy and to do unconventional warfare. And so I think overlaying that on a lot of different things, I just uh man, I fucking lost. You said something and I wanted to comment on that one thing. Uh I
Well,
knew I was going.
I said while we're in it, we're going 1,000 miles an hour, and I didn't have appreciation for it when I was in it. I discovered that years later. So
Yeah. Anyway, I know what I was going to say is that I have just a great appreciation for what being a special forces soldier taught me, and how I tell a lot of entrepreneurs I genuinely think it gave me an unfair advantage. Because to your earlier point, while probably a lot of people think that being a Green Beret is about kicking down doors and shooting people in the forehead, what we now understand, having lived that life, is that ultimately we want to solve the problem before it ever got to that point. And the reason why I have such a great appreciation and why I enjoyed it and what unconventional warfare really means is because it's honestly it's an incredibly complex chess game, right? And the higher that your level of expertise, if you're a grandmaster, then you can play the game. You can play it exceptionally well, and you can have great outcome. And so, while there's other people that need to be involved in order to make that thing happen, I'm simply saying if you're thinking at high strategic levels and you're thinking 3 to 5 moves ahead of the average person, it's really cool. It's really cool to see what those steps would look like and watch them play out and how they can interjoin in order to be able to get to the end state. And it's like, dang, that's awesome.
yeah, when it's clicking, right, and it starts to feel like, yeah, I've got this, and it's back on the team, back on training, back doing exactly the cool guy shit again, just in a different arena. Well, got 5 questions for you if you're ready.
Let's do it.
What is your response to thank you for your service?
Um, I'm grateful, like appreciate. Um, it's not a trigger for me like it is some people. Um, here's my thoughts. I'm appreciative that they're appreciative of what we're doing. Unfortunately, it's utilized so much that sometimes, it may have lost some of its intrinsic value. Um, but I think that depends on who's saying it and how they're saying it, right?
Mm-hmm.
People can come up to you and be like, "Oh, Nick, I'm so happy about you and this new job you got," right? And then you instantly are reading and assessing their paralinguistics and their body language, and you're saying they're full of shit. They don't give a crap about me in this job, right? Or you're like, I think that person actually is happy for me. Thank you. You know. So if people say thank you for your service and it's delivered with, some resemblance of sincerity and stuff, I'm appreciative that they appreciate what we've done.
When I wrote these questions out, I got 4 more for you, but
Mm-hmm.
the answers to just this first one have been so much different than what I expected. It is interesting. I enjoy it. I enjoy everybody's difference in response and how they even view what they think of the words being said to them. And like one guy said, I accept and I say thank you because of the Vietnam guys I served with on my team, because nobody ever said it to them. And I accept it as a whole sort of thing. I was like, that's such a everybody's got such a cool answer. So anyway, it's just interesting. I love it. What is the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional army?
Grit.
Just get it
That's
done.
not a characteristic, I guess, but uh, Tenacity then.
Oh, is this thing
Like,
gonna?
you, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Go ahead.
I saw my thing blink real quick that said bad connection. Yeah, it's the willingness to not quit.
I really, really think you missed an opportunity there to say the ability to run fast.
Yeah, you can see one of the things that I suffered from, right? That was a trigger for me is because I hated running so bad, but I knew it was a requirement. And so it was a struggle. I think the big difference is probably the more appropriate word, honestly, is mindset. And that's why I'm writing a book about stuff like that right now, is because mindset is everything. We talked about it earlier. It's, I was 145 pounds and 6'2". Now, by the time I got to selection, I was probably 175 or 180, right? So I wasn't rail skinny anymore. But the point is I wasn't the poster child. Like, they weren't going to ask me to be on the marketing campaign for Special Forces Soldier. But as we've discussed, quite in depth is it's the mindset. So I think it's the mindset, brother. I think you got to want it. When my two sons asked me about should I go into Ranger Battalion, I told them, I said, don't do it for me. You got to want it. If you don't want it, you're not going to make it. That's what I can tell you. You got to want it.
Yeah, just because we split this into two recordings, I went back and listened to your Ranger Regiment story about the 5-mile run. And then one of my buddies called me, who was an SF guy also. And I was reading the transcript to him. He goes, yeah, fuck that. I'm glad we were, didn't have to put up with any of that stupid bullshit and groove. I was like, yeah, man, that sounds terrible. Like, looking back now, fuck, you have to really want to be there. And if shit like that is happening, and yeah, you're right, mindset is a defining characteristic. What is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive?
I have two thoughts in my head. I have a thought about something I'd like to go and relive, understanding and knowing what I do now to understand the struggle, right? Which is selection in a Ranger Battalion. Because to me, that was super challenging. Yeah, that's my answer, man. Because the other one is newer, so it's relatively fresh. It's reference to that moment where I was performing over, about a year's time in order to get the results that they wanted to, and literally talking to the ambassador and representing.
Would you say that's the pinnacle of your career? That the culmination of everything 100%. You had learned was 100%. That, right? Yeah,
100%. It may not be as sexy to some people, but again, to me, hindsight was because of the trust that I had and because of the latitude that I was given. I was basically, do what you need to do. Just don't do anything illegal, but do what you need to do in order to make us be invited to the next Christmas party. And I was like, got it.
I love the vernacular.
In fact, I'll share with you this. I have a couple times that I say that the best thing somebody said to me, but this is probably the top one that I say the most. One of my best, why I'm brain fogging right now. When somebody says something positive about you, like a compliment. Probably the greatest compliment I ever got was I walked into the defense attache's office with a pair of purple pants and a purple shirt. And when I walked in, it was literally like a Hollywood movie. You could hear a pin drop. Everybody stopped moving and they were looking at me. And he was a Navy commander and he looked at me. And this was what he said. You have got to be the gayest SF dude I've ever met in my life. And I looked at him and I said, that is the best thing that you could have ever said to me. And I think everybody else in the office was like, this guy is fucking batshit crazy. Like, and he's like, what? And I go, if I'm that unassuming to you, then that means I can do exceptionally well at what my job really requires me to do, which is to win friends and influence people.
I don't know if anybody who wasn't an SF guy would understand what a compliment that is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I wasn't tatted out. I didn't have 20-inch guns. I have a neck, right? Like all of those things. I wasn't wearing the baseball cap and the Oakleys, and I didn't have the SF ring. And so for me, I was like, that tells me that I'm doing very well at what my specific task is here today.
Some fucking level shit through you right there. We'll leave it at that. What is the best piece of advice you received during your service?
I'm going to say this just because there's a tie between two of them, but I'm going to say this one because I share it with my children all the time because they all went in the service. I said, if you are in the right place at the right time in the right uniform doing the right thing, you're never going to have a fucking problem.
You can make Sergeant Major like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, people said that shit to us when we were in, but you're like, eh. I mean, I listen and I'm like, yeah, okay. But no, man, like let that sink in. In fact, when they said that to us, they should have sat us down and said, I want you to cross your A's and put your fucking arms out. And I want you to meditate on that. If you are in the right place at the right time, in the right uniform, doing the right thing, you will not have a problem. You're not. And if you do, it's because somebody is just blatantly being an asshole to you. Yeah. But no one is ever going to be an asshole for you for doing the right thing when you're told to, how you're told to, and bringing value to you and the organization. They're just not.
That's I would say that other than the NCO Corps being the backbone of the Army, that phrase right there is the Army to a T. That sums it up. If you want to be successful, just do those four things. And you don't even have to know your job. You don't have to know anything else. Just to do just those four things.
Yeah. Well, I'll share one last thing with my son because he was having some rough time in first group because of his last name. And I wasn't there. I was in Okinawa and people were pissed because he was at group. And they
what years is this?
17. Wait. No. Because I was at USASOC. Yeah, it was probably 18 or 19. I'd have to look back.
I was at 3rd Battalion in 18. Where was he at?
Support flying drones.
Oh, okay. I'd probably run into him.
But they were giving him shit because they were like, your daddy got you here. And so this is what I told him, and it lines up with what I just told you. I said, listen, I understand that it's a semi-toxic environment for you, and you may be at a point where you have to bring it up. All I'm simply saying to you is continue to perform. Continue to perform. If you perform, they can't say anything to you about doing a good job. Like no one is going to come to you. And if they do, they are 100% in the wrong. And I'm telling you, other people are watching, and eventually somebody's going to look at them and they're going to say, why are you fucking with him? Like he's literally performing, you know?
Especially at group, right?
Yeah. I know we're supposed to be ending, but I'll share this. I still remember being smoked in the locker room of Ranger Battalion. I was off post personnel because I was married. So we had a separate room with a separate locker room. And this platoon sergeant come in and said, why are you smoking them? And normally they don't give a shit. They're like, smoke them all day. But they just said, why are you smoking him? And he said, because of his locker. And he looked in, because I'm OCD, organizational OCD. He looked at my locker, and my platoon sergeant goes, that has probably got to be one of the fucking Strack lockers I've ever seen in my life. Like, please tell me you have another reason for smoking this dude. His shit is dressed to the point where like the arms are overlapped behind there. And this isn't an inspection day. This is just a normal day. But because I have OCD, I wanted my shit. My hangers are spaced out right. My socks are in the right door. And they're like, dude, he's talking to my team leader, who is a sergeant. He's like, you got to find a better reason to be smoking him than his locker, because that right there, that's the highest standard of what your locker should look like. Anyway.
I had a similar story. Mine was basic, right? My locker was perfect. Like, right place, right time, right uniform. I basic was pretty easy for me. I just understood. Okay, just do exactly what they say. Well, my locker was perfect. And luckily, my battle buddy's locker, he just mirrored mine. But we all got in trouble because if I had a squared away locker, how come I wasn't? Because she went to the next locker and she goes, oh, well, and then she couldn't find a reason there to get everybody else in trouble because his locker was just like mine. So we got in trouble because everybody else's locker. So she just went on down the line. And
of course,
but
mass punishment.
Mass punishment. Just because, I didn't get the 38 other people in the bay to do the exact same thing as me. So I got in trouble for that. But no, I sympathize. You're really selling Ranger Regiment here. In this, I'm sensing another thing. We got the running and just how awesome it was to be a private in Ranger Regiment. It just sounds great.
Listen, obviously it was a challenge, but I'm telling you right now, I would not change a thing.
No,
I would not. No. I don't think I would have performed at the levels that I did had I not been injected into that environment straight out. If I had went to a regular unit, yeah. But the intensity and the strictness, I mean, I was standing at parade rest for a PV2 because he's a PV2 and I was a PV1. Mm-hmm. It was an E1, nothing. It's just every aspect about it. It was absolutely all of the older movie type of strictness and regimentedness to, you're going to be dressed right rest. You're going to be on the right time, right uniform. You're going to hold the standards, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, I'm incredibly proud of my time, obviously, there. It was a struggle, but through great adversity brings great growth. And Ranger Battalion taught me that. Sucking builds character, and sucking, builds life experiences that help you become and do better.
You gotta, to make a knife, you gotta heat it up, right?
That's right.
Last one. What were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
Then meaning my entire my life?
Career.
You want me to say it? No, I was afraid of just not meeting the standards, right? So because I wanted to be there, I wanted to perform. But that was my drive too. I was smiling and joking because a huge piece of that, as I've said many times, was running.
Never forget. There it is.
It was, because I was like, I gotta be able to stay here, and I knew that that's the one thing that they would drop me in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail with no fucking questions asked. They're just gonna say did not meet regimental standard, RFS, release for standards. See you, goodbye. So I think rather than just specifying that one thing, I'm just saying generally the thing that I always was concerned about is not performing.
Yeah.
Because, and this ties into the Special Forces time, for me, I don't know what you were told, but before I actually went into the Q course and actually went into a team, I was told repeatedly, the number one thing that matters more than anything in Special Forces is your reputation. Now, I would argue that that's in every aspect of your life. But at that point, it was being emphasized for this specific thing that I had made a decision to become a Special Forces Green Beret soldier. And it was just told me over and over and over again, your reputation is everything. Once you lose that, it's game over. And so the whole entire thing, and probably the subconscious fear, was I have to perform and I have to be valuable. That's it. I think, what do I fear now? I think things have shifted a lot. You know, I'm 52 now, and I have 5 kids. I have 2 grandkids, another one on the way. Yeah. I'm trying to think really. Yeah, man, I think it's the same thing, man. It's failure, but it's
That's
not
okay.
failure about my physical fitness.
Yeah.
It's just I cannot fail. Cannot fail. In fact, we had a very deep and semi, triggering conversation this morning. And that's why I told my wife, I'm like, I can walk away from everything right now. And if I walk away from everything right now and it destroys my credit, I don't fucking care. It doesn't matter. I mean, I care, but it doesn't destroy me. It's a temporary setback. But the reason why I cannot fail is because I have a ton of people's money that they worked really hard for. And tying this all in a nice bow and ribbon for you on storytelling, the reason why those people gave me, most of these people, which are a lot of guys that I served with, told me they gave me the money because of my work ethic and because they know that I'm relentless in my pursuit of success.
Yeah.
It's those 2 reasons why they gave me the money.
You're honorable. You have honor.
Yeah, and they trusted me. They're like, I know, to steal my friends, he's like, unless you get hit by a bus, like, it's going to happen. Like, it's not going to not happen. And so my fear is I don't want to fail these people. And back to that picture behind me, I'm in one of those valleys right now. It's a fucking struggle, bro. Just keeping it real. 100% open kimono. It's a struggle right now. So do I feel sorry for myself episodically throughout the day? Yep. But it usually lasts somewhere around 4.5 seconds. And then I'm like, dude, you got to keep rowing. You got to keep rolling.
Up. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's everything. We've all got our ups and downs. And fight to get out of it. I have done very well for fighting to get out of it by quitting drinking. I've recovered much more quickly now on the downtrods of life. Jamie, say your last name for me.
Tilke.
All right. And Vision in Motion is your YouTube channel. And if guys are coming through Fayetteville, which imagine a few of them do, what is the availability at Pineland Express for them to stay there long term?
Oh, that's so cute that the balloons went off. Did you see that?
Yeah, was that because I said something?
So if you didn't know, this app also has these things where if you do certain hand gestures or something like that, which honestly, I have no idea what we're doing that's making that happen. I know if I put a thumbs up, it will put a thumbs up emoji on the screen.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the answer to your question. One slight correction. The name of my YouTube channel is called Motion Matters. And it's all about the trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship.
How did I come up with that then?
Because the name of my website is Vision in Motion.
Oh,
and
okay.
That's more of my consulting and speaking. In fact, if somebody visits it right now, apologies in advance, but I'm adding a couple pages. So the website's not perfectly aligned right now, but I actually just talked to the guy this morning and hopefully in the next week or 2, it will be fixed. The visioninmotion.co, not .com, because I couldn't buy it because somebody already stole that URL. It's visioninmotion.co. that's just a little background about who is Jamie Tilke and consulting for anybody that has entrepreneurial aspirations or real estate investing. And then, I'm trying to build out the speaking platform. As far as Pineland Express goes, the availability is actually opened up some because I was doing a bunch of different people, even though I wanted to focus primarily on military, but I made an executive decision like literally 2 weeks ago that we were doing a lot of traveling nurses, but unfortunately, they had to come in at a lower rate, and it just made it hard to cover operational expenses because we did do such high level renovations to a lot of our units. They have quartz countertops and, Italian leather sofas and Bose sound bars. I mean, we dumped some scripts into this thing. So if guys are interested though, you can go to the website and you can see our phone number. And if you contact it, it's going to be either myself or my wife that picks up. And anybody that's here for extended stays, we offer, thank you gifts for people that are staying. But here's what I would say.
Yeah.
There's other people that have come on board since we initiated ours. It is what it is. It's part of business. But what I will tell you, people that are listening to this show that might have any interest is this. We dumped $1.4 million into this place. This is not lipstick on a pig. These are rainfall showers and tile bathrooms that you would find in $1 million houses. Why? Because I served just like they served. And I wanted to create a place where guys could come and stay and truly feel like they were in their own place, home away from home, with fiber internet and sweet ass amenities, washer and dryer and all that stuff. But it's their own. You ain't sharing it with nobody. It's your place. It's in a gated compound. We have a corporate membership to Fit for Life, which has one of the best gyms in town. It's 24 hours a day. You can go anytime. So I've went and tried to put in a lot of things in place because, as we know, as traveling military, when you're away from your family, it sucks. But if I can provide you comfort and amenities, that's going to make it a little bit better. And B, as much per diem that I can have absorbed by the accommodations, then that frees up cash for me to potentially take back to me and my family. So yeah, just hit us up. I would love, and I'll leave you with this. I've told a bunch of guys that have come and talked to me, including Sean. I said, listen, come stay at our place for 3 days. And if you can look at me and tell me that this is not the best place you've ever stayed in your entire life, we shake hands. I'll buy you a bottle of your favorite liquid refreshments. No hard feelings. You don't have to pay me. It's all good. But it's not going to happen because there is nothing that's curated at the level that I've done this. I know it 100%. 100%.
Well, shit. Sounds like I got to go back to Fayetteville then again. All right. I will have links for all your socials in the episode description. And you got anything for me, man?
No, dude. I look forward to having you on the show once I finish decluttering, which I'm working on. So I appreciate this opportunity. I think what you're doing is awesome. And yeah, honestly, any way that I can support you, man, sharing your stuff, liking, giving you comments to help your algorithm out. You know what? I just want to say this on your behalf because it's hard when you're the guy on the other side. And this is for all the people listening to you. If you're listening to this show and you made it to this far in the episode and you're thinking to yourself, Nick's a great guy. He served, I served. I'd love to help him out. Here's how you help him out. A, you subscribe to his channel. B, when he posts shit, all you have to do is click the like button and make a comment, and that help out the algorithm. And that makes them want to share it with more people. And that's how you help what we used to call word of mouth is now digital word, right? Or digital transformation of the voices and linkage and all that stuff. So that's a free way that you can help out Nick by doing that. So anyway, I'm going to do that for you when I see your shit, brother.
I appreciate that. And let me know when I can come on. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And well, that was a long one, but bye, everybody.